Hi, welcome back, guys. This is your friend, Caller What If with another fiction. This is a fanfic reading What If OCHAKO and HIMIKO's Unbreakable Bonds epic UA journey. Now, before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now, let's get into the fanfic. Hero schools all over Japan was testing applicants to determine the students for the next year. Currently, everyone was sat down for their written exam. One such examinee was Ochako Yororaka. Ochako was a slightly short girl, with a decent amount of baby fat still present on her features. Her short brown hair had two bangs framing her face. She matching brown eyes and permanent blush marks on her face. She was nervously going through the written test. She couldn't help but fearfully look toward the teachers. We're technically cheating, aren't we? Oh, come Ochako. We aren't doing anything wrong, came a voice that she had become incredibly familiar with over the past few months. The answer to that one is 63, by the way. Thank you, Himiko, Ochako replied mentally. I still can't help but feel like we have an unfair advantage. People with intelligence quirks have an unfair advantage here, Himiko answered. So I'll help where I can and get our spot in the hero course. All right, let's just finish up the written test. Then we'll take on the practical, Ochako hummed to herself as she kept writing, with Himiko helping provide answers they studied for. Soon enough, they were all told that the written exam was finished and to place their pencils down. Ochako took a deep breath to calm her nerves. The applicants were guided to an amphitheater, where President Mike explained how the practical would take place. We got nothing to worry about, Ochako. With our strength and your quirk, we'll destroy this exam, reassured Himiko. Yeah, but if push comes to shove, we'll need your acrobatics, Himiko, Ochako commented, so be ready to switch if we need it. Soon after the test was explained, they were all given a chance to change into sport, where Ochako slid some sunglasses on to cover her eyes and were loaded onto buses and taken to their respective test sites. How big is US budget? Whistled Ochako. Maybe we can try and talk about getting my parents a contract here. She tuned out the chatter of the other participants. She performed some breathing exercises she looked up online. While she could hear a couple people arguing toward the back, she closed her eyes and kept her focus. And start, President Mike shouted from the top of a watchtower. What are you waiting for? There's no countdown in a real fight. Ochako wasted no time, running as fast as she could. She was near the front of the pack. Only the guy with engines in his legs was staying ahead of her. As she kept pace, she saw a two-pointer slide in front of her. Himiko legs, she thought, before surrendering control. Her run continuing uninterrupted, she jumped and launched a kick at the robot's shoulder, tearing through the elbow joint. Ochako arm, Himiko commanded. Listening to her companion, she grabbed the robotic limb, removing its gravity in the process. I'm giving you the legs back if you give me an eye. Ochako blinked, her left eye changing from its normal brown to a bright gold with a slit pupil, the ball moving independently from her right. Ochako kept her pace as constant as possible, using the arm as a club to break down some of the other robots, and throwing the rest after removing their gravity. Himiko kept issuing warnings, allowing Ochako to avoid attacks from the left. What was that, 34? She asked, trying to catch her breath. 38 actually, Himiko answered. When you dropped that three-pointer, it crushed a couple two-pointers. Thanks, Himiko. She thought we'll get an extra large smoothie after this. Before the brunette could continue, the ground began shaking. A giant robot, as big as the buildings, emerged, sending rubble in all directions. Ochako tried to dive out of the way, only for a rock to land on her leg. Oh, she yelled as she fell to the ground, her sunglasses falling off in the process. Himiko, can you get us out of here? Yeah, no problem, Himiko answered as Ochako surrendered control, her eyes both turning gold. Before any moves could be made, however, a green blur shot past them towards the zero-pointer's head. Smash was yelled before everyone watched the metal colossus crumble like tissue. Shit, he's falling, Himiko exclaimed, kicking the debris from her leg. She rose to her feet as quick as possible. The moment I jump, I'm giving you control back. Got it, Ochako replied, bracing herself for the switch. The moment her feet left the ground, her eyes flashed back to Brown. Slapped her hand across her chest, removing her own gravity. Rising at a steady rate, she reached the falling boy, catching him as best she could. I got you, she said, hoping to calm him. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw the state of his body. Both of his legs and his right arm were broken. She shifted her hold to be more gentle as they descended slowly toward the ground. The boy had dark green curly hair and bright green eyes. He also had 4 freckles on each cheek. Ochako recognized him from the entrance, where she stopped him from tripping over. She carefully set him on the ground, only to be shocked as he attempted to move away. Hey, calm down, or you'll hurt yourself more. Jay, just 1 point, he grunted out. Time's up, Present Mike announced to all the exam participants. With that announcement made, the green-haired boy passed out. Ochako couldn't help but feel bad for him. Think we could give the cutie some of our points. See, cutie. Ochako couldn't help but be shocked at Himiko's question. She looked down at the unconscious boy. Well, you're not wrong. Excuse me, dearie, came an elderly voice. Looking towards it, she saw a short old lady with her gray hair in a bun and a cane shaped like a giant syringe. Do you have any injuries? I'm fine. But he needs lots of help. Ochako immediately showed her concern for a person she didn't even know the name of. She watched as the old lady kissed the boy's forehead. The moment her lips impacted him, his injuries began to rapidly heal before her eyes. There we go, all done, the old lady said finally. Would you like me to help move him? Ochako offered. No, that's all right. The support drones can carry him to the infirmary, she reassured. You can run along now, dearie. Okay, the brunette replied hesitantly. After she left, she went to find Present Mike. Dressed back her school uniform, she wandered through the halls to find Present Mike. She saw exiting through an office door. Present Mike, sir, she called out, getting the pro's attention. You know that guy who saved me from the 0-pointer? He has green hair, freckles. Kinda cute, kinda cute. When she realized she absent-mindedly copied Himiko, a blush erupted across her face. Mike just watched with a patient smile. I was wondering if I could give him some of my points, she said. He hurt himself really badly trying to help me. And I heard him say, just 1 point. So could I transfer some of my points to him, please? Thanks for showing up to the station with your request, Mike replied, gently patting her on the head. But there's no need to give him your points. The kid's charting well on his own. Ochako was confused by the pro's words. Pushing his hand off her head, did that make any sense to you, Himiko? Nope. I'm as lost as you, her companion answered. But it sounds like we won't need to worry too much. Okay, thank you, Ochako said eventually. I guess I'll leave now. Stay safe, listener, Present Mike called, waving goodbye. Ochako couldn't help but pace around the apartment. It had been a week since the entrance exams, and the wait had been driving her crazy. Ochako, if you don't stop pacing, I will make us sit down, said Himiko, leaving no room for argument in her voice. I'm nervous too, but if you keep going, you're just gonna tire us out. Sorry, Himiko, it's just, she mumbled, knowing her companion would hear her. We worked really hard for this, and Mom and Dad need us to help. I know. I want to help too, Himiko replied. You guys have done a lot for me. I wish we got off to a better start though. Himiko, that's all in the past now, Ochako sighed. I have nothing to do but wait and worry. Well, Mom and Dad said they'd be coming around later, so. Ochako, you're the best person I know. If anyone deserves to be a hero, it's you, Himiko said strongly. So how about you take a nap? I'll clean up the apartment for when your parents show up. Okay, I'll let you handle it, she replied before sitting down on a cushion. For a moment she slumped forward, only to stand up with golden eyes. Thanks, Ochako, whispered Himiko. Gently humming to herself, she moved around the apartment, picking up loose trash and wiping down the counters. A small noise from the front door got her attention. Going to the entrance, she opened the mailbox, only to see the very object that had been causing Ochako's anxiety. A letter with the UA stamp sealing it. She picked it up and returned to the living room. She placed it on the table and just stared. I'm not opening it without you, Ochako, she thought to herself. But you need your rest right now. With a sigh, she moved over to the kitchen and started preparing her smoothie, tossing a couple cherries and strawberries into the blender. Opening the fridge, she reached into the back and pulled out a bag of duck blood. It still took Himiko by surprise that there was animal blood freely available to be purchased at low prices for those that had blood-related quirks. Sure, it was animal blood, which didn't taste as sweet as human blood. I think it's a small price to pay for keeping my mind in one piece, she hummed, pouring half of the bag's contents into the blender. It wasn't a new model, and the lid had to be held down, but it did the job. While I'm waiting for that, she thought, leaning over to the sink before spitting a gray sludge down the drain, the inside of her mouth restructuring itself in the process. I hate doing that. But Ochako doesn't like the taste of blood. Spitting the rest of the goo away, she turned the blender off. She ran her rougher and slightly longer tongue over her visibly sharpened teeth before nodding in approval. With that work done, she resealed the blood bag and placed it back in the fridge. Just as she was about to pour her drink, a knock at the door drew her attention. Placing everything down as to not make a mess, she went to answer the door. Opening the door revealed Shuhei Uraraka and Riko Uraraka. Just like they had promised, they were here to visit. Riko Uraraka looked like an older version of her daughter, with slightly thicker hair and the same permanent blush marks on her cheeks. The biggest difference between the two Urarakas was Riko's dark blue eyes. Shuhei, however, looked quite different from his daughter, with short sand-colored hair and minor stubble on his chin. But Ochako seemed to inherit his brown eyes. "Hi, honey. We told you we'd come by," Riko greeted. She then noticed the girl's eyes. "Are you still feeling uncomfortable in your own skin, Himiko?" Himiko stepped aside to let them in. "I just think it's better not being me." Shuhei closed the door behind himself. "When we say, we want you to be happy, we do mean both of you," he said softly. "But," Himiko stuttered, "what I did to you, daughter?" Himiko's protests were soon cut off as Riko embraced her in a gentle hug. Tears welled up in the girl's eyes. "It may have been weird, but you are my daughter too," she whispered. "I'm sorry if we made you feel unaccepted, Himiko." "We're here for you, Himiko," reassured Ochako. "We're your family now. I thought it was obvious." "Why, you really mean it?" Himiko asked hesitantly. Shuhei stepped forward, joining in on the hug. "We came here to see our daughters," he said quietly. "Thanks, Mum, Dad," Himiko gently mumbled. A fresh set of tears coming from her eyes. "Ochako, can you?" "Of course, Himiko." The girl closed her eyes, and in that blink, the color changed to a brown, matching the only male present. She immediately noticed something different. "Himiko, did you change the mouth?" "I was about to have blood smoothie earlier when," she trailed off. "Anyway, I know you don't like the taste of blood, so." "Himiko, don't try and accommodate me. I'll get used to it," Ochako answered mentally. "I might even grow to like it." She stepped away from the group hug and towards the kitchen. "So can you drop this part of the transformation, please? We'll never get used to this if we don't take steps like this." "Okay. But brace yourself, it's not a pleasant experience," Himiko warned. Before Ochako could wonder what her companion meant, her mouth filled with an odd-tasting sludge. She hurriedly moved over to the sink and spat it out as quick as she could. "Well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be," she mumbled, her voice noticeably lower, almost husky. "Is that our voice?" "I dropped a transformation on the mouth and throat," Himiko replied. "I can turn it back to yours if you want." "One sec," she thought back, reaching for a recently cleaned pan to check her reflection. She stared into the impromptu mirror and opened her mouth. Her canines were sharper than normal, but not to the degree of being called fangs, and her tongue was slightly longer and wider than it was earlier. She looked over at the smoothie that Himiko made earlier before grabbing it. Sniffing, she could faintly smell the strawberries and cherries that Himiko had tossed into the blender. She could definitely smell the blood that had been poured in. Tentatively, she took a sip before her eyes widened in surprise. Uncaring of her parents' stares, Ochako tilted her head back and chugged the smoothie down in record time. Himiko, does blood always taste that good for you? Wait, you liked it? She couldn't help but ask in confusion. Ochako hadn't expressed such a positive attitude in the past. Are you kidding? That was amazing. Ochako answered, wait, do you think that I have the parts of your taste buds that are made for drinking blood? Before the girls could continue their mental back and forth, Riko loudly cleared her throat. Excuse me, girls, but I believe that your father and I came here for a reason, she said gently but firmly. Ochako felt her entire face grow red. Right? Sorry, Ochako and Himiko said simultaneously. Himiko, where's the letter? Table, Himiko squeaked. Ochako practically leaped across the apartment. She gripped the letter firmly. Oh man, she mumbled. I don't think I could do this alone. That's why we're here, Shusei said, placing a hand on her shoulder. Dad, she complained with an embarrassed blush. I changed my mind. Please leave. Riko and Shusei burst into laughter at their daughter's cries. Come on, honey. I want to see how well the two of you did, the mother asked. Half and half? Ochako asked quietly. Yeah. Ochako surrendered control of her left arm and eye, the eye changing back to the gold with a slit pupil. All right, let's do this, she mumbled, working together almost synchronized. They were surprised when a small metal disc fell out of the envelope and onto the table. Before anyone could react, a projection was emitted from the disc, displaying a white furred animal with a thick scar over his right eye in a white button shirt, a red tie, and a black waistcoat. Any other clothing was not shown on camera. Greetings, young Uraraka. You may be wondering, am I a dog? Am I a mouse? Or am I a bear? In truth, none of these matter because I am the principal of UN Nezu, the animal greeted cheerfully. I must commend you on your written exam score with 84% correct. This puts you in the upper half of scorers. Wow, we did a lot better than I thought, Himiko commented. Haha, that's my girls, Shusei cheered, ruffling Ochako's hair. Now about the practical exam, Nezu continued. You scored 38 villain points. This alone would have been enough to make it into the hero course. However, there was more than the participants were aware of. Ochako's eyebrows raised at the principal's words. What? As this is hero course, we couldn't just ignore the ones who took action for the sake of others. He explained, showing a clip of her saving the green-haired boy. Your actions were commendable and likely saved this boy a long stay in the hospital. Naturally, we couldn't ignore this action. And thus you have earned 50 rescue points. Wait, do you think he got rescue points for saving us? Himiko questioned. Maybe. I guess we asked Present Mike for nothing, Ochako answered. With 88 total points, I am pleased to say you have achieved the highest score in the entrance exam, Nezu said calmly. So I welcome you to your hero academia. Ochako felt the tears of joy well in her eyes at Nezu's announcement. We did it, she mumbled, before both of her parents enveloped her in a group hug. However, I would like to speak with you in person before the school year begins, Nezu continued ominously. I would like to know the circumstances of both you and your partner. With his final words, the projection shut itself off, leaving the Uraraka family in complete disbelief. What? Ochako had never been more nervous in her entire life than she was at this moment, standing outside of UA for the second time. She had tried to dress smartly for the meeting with a white blouse and a black knee-length skirt, her brown coat keeping her warm. Ochako, what do we tell him? Asked Himiko nervously. I have no idea, she answered, jumping slightly when the school's gate opened, but we'll face it together. A large muscular man in a red suit, with short white hair, who they recognized as the pro-hero Vlad King, greeted them at the entrance. Nezu has been expecting you, he said gruffly. He asked that I escort you to his office. Oh my God, it's Vlad King. Ochako, please, Himiko begged. Sir, can I ask for something first? Ochako squeaked. What is it? He asked. She pulled a small notepad out of her coat pocket and presented it to the man in front of her. My sister, Himiko, is a really big fan of yours, she said slowly. So could you write an autograph for her, please? Vlad looked surprised at the girl's request. Before schooling his features, I would be happy to, he answered with a small smile. You said Himiko, right? Yeah, she has a blood quirk too, Ochako blurted out, before looking embarrassed. It's okay. We're sisters now, Himiko reassured. Thank you for calling me that, Ochako. It's the truth, Himiko, she replied. She looks up to you because of that. I know there's some stigma against blood quirks, but I'm glad I can be a figure for her to admire. He handed the notepad back, allowing Ochako to read his words. Himiko, it doesn't matter what people tell you. You can be a great person as long as you believe in yourself and work hard for your goals, Vlad King. Thanks, Ochako, Himiko said quietly. Thank you, Ochako said sincerely. No problem. Just keep looking out for her, Vlad replied. Now let's not keep the principal waiting any longer. The two walked through U.S. corridors. Ochako couldn't help but look around and wonder. The path was confusing to say the least. I think we passed that same fire extinguisher 3 times, complained Himiko. Here we are, declared Vlad, standing in front of rather plain wooden door. Before he could even knock, the door swung open on its own. Thank you for escorting my guest here, Vlad, came the principal's cheery voice. I can handle everything else from here. Vlad nodded in understanding before making his exit. Ochako nervously swallowed before entering the mammal's office. Nezu sat behind his desk, pouring 2 cups of tea. Ochako sat down in the seat in front of the desk and waited for him to begin. Good morning, Miss Uraraka. I trust you didn't have too many issues coming to this meeting today. He started, a small smile on his animal features. How would you like your tea? 1 sugar and a drop of milk, she answered, removing her coat before accepting the offered cup. Thank you. Now do you know what I would like to discuss with you today? He asked with an innocent look, as if he hadn't given the Uraraka family a panic attack through the acceptance letter. My partner, she answered. What exactly did you mean by that? Ah, well, that was quite the puzzle to decipher, he replied. While there is no way to prove you had assistance during the written test. He paused to take a sip of tea. The practical portion of the exam was a different matter. It was my eyes, wasn't it? She asked, knowing the cat was out of the bag. That was quite a small detail. I don't believe any of the staff in the observation room noticed it, he replied. The first indicator I received was when you ran into the testing grounds. The only person who kept pace with you was someone whose quirk was built entirely for speed. We trained really hard for that exam, Himiko whined, trying to defend her sister. I did a lot of training, she mumbled weakly, and I removed my gravity. Miss Uraraka, I ask that you don't lie to me, said Nezu curtly. May I speak to your partner? Himiko, should we? Ochako asked. Okay, let's switch, Himiko replied. I don't want to put our place at UA at risk. Ochako closed her eyes and let out a resigned sigh. When the girl's eyes opened, they were golden with a slit pupil. Ah, hello there, Nezu greeted calmly. May I ask for your name? My name is Himiko, she answered. I guess it's Himiko Uraraka now. And what exactly do you mean by that? We should tell the full story, said Ochako. It's the easiest way to explain the name change. All right, Himiko thought back. Ochako thinks it will be easier to just tell you the full story. Nezu sat back in his chair to get more comfortable. By all means, go ahead. Flashback 4 months ago. Ochako had recently moved into an apartment closer to UA, so she could get used to area before attending the school. Her family were rather lucky that the building owner was friends with her parents, so she could stay here for a cheaper price. Over the past couple days, Ochako had been partaking in dumpster diving, ever since she found a cool coat stand in the trash behind the building. After a bit of a cleaning, it was as good as new. So it annoyed her that it had been thrown out. It was on one these dives that her life was changed forever. She was on her to the large dumpster in the alley behind the apartment building when found another girl laying down on the floor. She was a blonde girl with her hair tied into two messy buns. Her skin looked rather pale. She was wearing a dirty school uniform with a couple tears in the shirt and skirt. Ochako also noticed that one of girl's shoes was missing. "Hey, are you okay?" Ochako didn't even hesitate before checking the girl's condition. Gently nudging the girl, all she received was a small groan. "I should get you inside, before you freeze." She picked the girl up as carefully as she could, using her quirk to remove the blonde's gravity. When she made it to her apartment, she placed the girl face up on the couch with a blanket to help her warm up. It wouldn't be until noon that the girl woke up. She was scared of the new and unfamiliar environment. She noticed a box cutter on the table and immediately snatched it. "Oh," a voice came from the kitchen. Looking over, she could see a brunette holding her finger to her mouth. When she blinked, the brunette was in front of her. "Oh hey, you're awake," she greeted with a small smile. "I'm Ochako Uraraka. What's your name?" "Himiko," she mumbled, eyes focused on the cut on Ochako's finger. "Blood." "HM. Oh, I was making lunch, and I guess I got a bit careless," Ochako laughed, scratching the back of her head with her free hand. "I need it," Himiko mumbled, her vision swimming, and a voice in the back of her head screaming at her to take it. The urge chipped away at her will, and before she knew it, she pounced. Ochako screamed as this girl attacked her with a box cutter, the fresh cut on her cheek spilling blood, falling backwards onto the floor. She didn't get a chance to react before Himiko straddled her, pinning her in place. "Need blood," Himiko muttered with a desperation in her tone. She proceeded to suck at Ochako's cut, causing the brunette to blush deeply. "What are you doing?" she cried. Himiko couldn't hear her. A deep hunger inside was finally starting to be satiated. A small switch in the back of her head telling her she could become this nice girl. Himiko decided she liked that idea. Not being the monster she was, but being this nice girl who gave her blood. Trusting her instincts, Himiko began to produce a slimy sludge that steadily covered her body. "What is this stuff?" Ochako cried out, panicking as the sludge began to coat her as well. An hour later, Ochako climbed back to her feet. "Oh, my head," she mumbled. "What happened?" a voice in girl's head asked, clearly confused. "What the?" Ochako, Himiko asked, looking around in surprise. "I didn't say that." Ochako panicked. "Why are things moving?" Himiko stumbled toward the bathroom, her legs moving without her consent. In that moment, she became a passenger in her body. "What is happening right now?" she questioned. "How are you in my head?" Ochako cried out, stumbling into the bathroom. She could see her reflection in the mirror, her clothes covered in the weird sludge Himiko emitted earlier. After a moment of staring, the girl's eyes flickered to a golden color, and Himiko could move again. "What did you do to me?" "What did I do?" Ochako yelled. "You're the one who attacked me. I just wanted to make sure that the person I found in the alley was okay." Himiko's eyes began to fill with tears. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, dropping to her knees. "I was so hungry, and when I saw that cut on your finger, I just—" The girl's eyes then changed back to brown. "What do you mean?" Ochako asked. "I've always found blood to be so pretty. I even drank some blood from dead birds when I was little," Himiko whispered. "But my parents didn't like that. It wasn't normal. I wasn't normal." A cold pit began to form in Ochako's stomach. "Did they make you suppress your urges?" "Yes." Ochako covered her mouth in shock. "That's no right," she shouted. "Some quirks come with dietary restrictions. One of my classmates has a quirk that makes her eat hair." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Wait, what does your quirk do with the blood?" "I can turn into other people," Himiko answered. "Why? Do you think?" "When you tried to turn into me," Ochako started slowly. "You turned into me, with me?" The question confused them both. "The slime stuff that I think transforms you." Covered me too, so? The girl blinked, her eyes changing again. Do you think if I drop my quirk, we'll split? Himiko asked. It couldn't hurt to try, Ochako replied unsure. Himiko closed her eyes and focused on her quirk. She willed it to deactivate with a mental command. Himiko felt a familiar feeling of sludge falling from her body. When she opened her eyes, the mirror showed one girl instead of two. I wasn't expecting that, Himiko mumbled. What does this mean for me? Present day. And that's how we got to where we are today, Ochako finished. After a while we learned we could switch control, even give partial control. So would I be correct in assuming this isn't your natural form? Nezu asked calmly, fascinated with circumstance the girls before him went through. No, but we kind of make a mess when we transform, Ochako replied, looking sheepish. If a mess is all you are concerned about, I have a private restroom connected to my office, just in case I need to stay here for an extended period of time, the principal explained, gesturing to the door on the far right of the office. I would like to see your natural state. Himiko, what do you think? She asked. This is your body too. I do prefer being you, Himiko sighed, but need to learn to be ourselves. Thank you for the offer, sir, Ochako eventually replied, before entering the room. Nezu sat patiently at his desk, thinking over the girl's story. It was an unexpected sequence of events. With all the facts he was given, he began to run mental simulations to calculate the odds of this result happening in the first place. Sir, I'm back, spoke a female voice, slightly higher pitched than Ochako's with a small raspiness to it. Turning to the source, Nezu was greeted with a new face entirely. She was slightly paler than Ochako, but kept the permanent blush marks on her cheeks. Her hair was much longer, reaching the middle of her back. It started the same brunette as Ochako's, but faded to a blonde halfway down. Her eyes were the most distinct, a swirl of chocolate brown and gold. Would take a seat once again, young Uraraka, Nezu said calmly. I'm afraid it is rather difficult to tell which Uraraka I am speaking to at the moment. Well, I'm Ochako for the record, she replied, returning to her seat. And technically you always to talk to both of us. We can see and hear everything the other does. Fascinating. How does this translate to physical sensations? He inquired. It depends on who's in control. When one of us in control, the other can feel it. But it's muted, she answered. It honestly feels a little weird being like this again. But a good weird. Really? Himiko asked, audibly surprised. It's like taking off a hat, or something, she smiled. Himiko. We've been sharing a body for 4 months now, so this feels more natural now. Before Himiko could reply to Ochako's heartfelt words, Nezu cleared his throat to draw their attention. I have been thinking through the entire story you have given me, he grinned. I must say the two of you are quite lucky. I believe there was only a 6% chance of your circumstance happening. Whoa, Ochako was so stunned that she accidentally dropped all control, forcing Himiko into the spotlight. What do you mean? Himiko asked, breathing a little faster. Himiko, you need not worry yourself with what-ifs now, Nezu replied, not answering the question. If you focus on things like that, you will simply hurt yourself. Wait, how could you? Your way of speaking is different to young Ochako's, Nezu replied. I think I can save something to help the both of you right now. The principal took a small sip of his tea. I believe the both of you will do well at my school. I will pass a message along about your dietary requirements, and I ask that you send us a sizable amount of your hair. Why? They asked, their voice seemingly echoing on itself. Interesting. When the two of say the same words in your natural form, both voices will be heard, Nezu chuckled. In any case, the reason why is because it can use to create quirk-sensitive fabric for your hero costume. Quirk-sensitive fabric. Yes, this is a special material that works alongside your quirk, he answered. It is the same kind of material that Endeavor uses in his suit so it doesn't burn. That's kinda cool, Himiko mumbled. Yes, it is cool as you said, Nezu chuckled. I will not keep you here any longer. You may use the restroom to change again if you wish. Himiko, is it okay if we stay like this a little while? Asked Ochako. Okay. But you can walk, Himiko answered, releasing control back to Ochako. Thank you, Principal Nezu, she said politely before making her exit. Nezu stared at the closed door to his office for a few moments. I believe this will be an interesting school year. You ready, Himiko? Ochako asked, taking a calming breath. You know it, she replied. You should calm down a little. It's just the first day. I know, you're right, Ochako smiled. Now reassured, she walked steadily through the high school gate. What pro hero do you think we'll have for homeroom? I hope it's Vlad King. Other than him. Himiko paused and thought. Maybe President Mike. I don't know a lot of US staff. Fair enough. Ochako stopped in her tracks when she heard a couple people talking ahead. Looking towards the source, she could see a giant open door with "Wanna" printed on it. Is that who I think it is? Himiko asked upon seeing who was in the doorway. Hey, I recognize that messed up hair. Falling boy, Ochako called, drawing his attention. So it looks like you did pass the exam. Not that I'm surprised, that punch was amazing. Oh, hey, hi, he stuttered with a red face. I should probably be thanking you for going in and talking to him. Huh. How did? Ochako trailed off as his words registered that he knew what she had said to present Mike at the entrance exam. She suddenly blushed. It was no problem. Damn it, Himiko. He knows what happened, she yelled mentally, only to receive laughter in response. He looks nervous, said Himiko seriously. Ochako blinked, seeing what her friend meant. Hey, are you okay? She asked sincerely. I'm just really nervous about today is all, he muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Well, other than orientation, I don't think we. If you're just here to make friends, you can pack up your stuff now, said a tired voice, interrupting her. Looking behind her, she could see a man in a large yellow sleeping bag. That definitely wasn't there earlier. Welcome to US Hero course. The man inside unzipped it slightly and drained a jelly pouch. Where the hell did he come from? Himiko questioned. The hallway was empty 5 seconds ago. It took you all 8 seconds to shut up. That's not gonna work, he said while standing up and exiting his sleeping bag. Time is precious. Rational students would understand that. Any clue who this guy is? Ochako asked, clearly confused. No idea. Hello, I'm Shouta Aizawa, your teacher, he announced, shocked the entire classroom. This guy? He ignored the class staring, reaching into the sleeping bag. Right, let's get to it, he said, pulling out a blue uniform. Put these on and head outside. Ochako didn't get a chance to voice her questions before everyone started leaving the room, absent-mindedly following the female students into the locker room. She got changed into the sports uniform before slipping her wristbands on and pulling a pair of sports goggles out of her bag and placing them around her neck for now. They had tinted lenses that hid her eyes so no one could tell when she switched with Himiko. She should thank Principal Nezu for sending them to her. Let's go now, said Himiko. Ochako nodded in response, leaving the locker room with the other girls, all of them too nervous to say anything. All of the class was soon gathered in the sports field, confused as to why their homeroom teacher gathered them all out here. I've made you all come out here for a quirk assessment test, he stated plainly. What? A quirk assessment test? A number of students cried out simultaneously. Jinx, Himiko giggled. Wait a second. What about orientation? Ochako asked, finishing Himiko's thought. We're gonna miss it. If you really want to make the big leagues, you can't waste time on pointless ceremonies, Aizawa said dismissively. Here at UA, we're not tethered to traditions. That means I get to run my class however I see fit. But orientation would explain all the facilities that UA can provide for us, said Himiko, clearly annoyed at the teacher's attitude. You've all been taking standardized tests most of your lives, he continued. But you never got to use your quirks in physical exams before. The country is still trying to pretend we're all created equal by not letting those with more power excel. It's not rational. One day the Ministry of Education will learn. Is it just me? Or does that sound like quirk supremacy? Himiko asked nervously. You're a Raka. You managed to get the most points on the entrance exam, he said plainly, isolating Ochako in front of the whole class. The spiky blonde seemed to growl at those words. What was your farthest distance throw with a softball in junior high? I actually wasn't allowed to do it, she admitted, staring down at the ground in embarrassment. My quirk is in my hands, and it's always active so. Right, have a go here. And don't hesitate to use your quirk, he said. Ochako hurried over to the circle. Anything goes. Just stay in the circle. When she blinked in confusion, he continued, Go on, you're wasting our time. Ochako grabbed the ball, removing its gravity before stretching a little. She threw the ball as hard as she could, watching as it continued to soar off into the distance, before it became too far to see with the naked eye. All of you need to know your maximum capabilities. It's the most rational way of figuring out your potential as a pro hero. He held up a device in his hand that plainly said infinite, shocking the whole class. Infinity. Wow, that was cool fucking bullshit, were some of things she heard them say. The spiky blonde was clenching his fist, with smoke emitting from his hands. I want to go. That looks fun, said a pink girl with short hair. This is what I'm talking about, said a dark-haired teen in the back. We can use our quirks as much as we want. So this looks fun, huh? Aizawa said darkly. You have 3 years here to become a hero. You think it's all going to be games and play time. He smirked. Idiots. Today you'll compete in 8 physical tests to gauge your potential. Whoever comes in last will have none and be expelled immediately. That's bullshit, Himiko cried. That puts all mental and non-enhancement quirks at a huge disadvantage. Like I said, I get to decide how this class runs. Understand? He pushing his hair back. If that's a problem, you can head home right now. You can't send one of us home, Ochako and Himiko yelled in sync. We just got here, even if it wasn't the first day. That isn't fair. And do you think natural disasters are? Or power-hungry villains? Or catastrophic accidents that wipe out whole cities? He asked rhetorically. No, the world is full of unfairness. It's a hero's job to combat that unfairness. He stared at the class blankly. If you want to be a pro, you're going to have to push yourself to the brink. For the next 3 years, Yua will throw one terrible hardship after another at you. So go beyond plus ultra style. He made a come-on gesture with his hand. Show me it's no mistake that you're here. Why is he expecting us to be like pros already? Demanded Himiko. We're here to learn how to be heroes. I know. We already proved we should be here, Ochako agreed. It shouldn't be up to him, who is hero material on the first day. Now then, we're just wasting time by talking, he said uncaring. Let the games begin. Ochako did her best to breathe calmly, all while adjusting her goggles to cover her eyes. The 50-meter dash is the up first, she thought, watching as a tall boy in glasses zoomed by. I think he was at our entrance exam, Himiko observed. Your quirk can probably help a bit here. I'll lighten up my clothes, she mumbled. Oh, and my shoes too. The moment she was told to go, she bolted from her starting position, running as fast as her legs could carry her. After crossing the finish line, she heard a robotic voice call out, 5:44 seconds. Wow, you really did power me up, Himiko thought Ochako. That was so much faster than junior high. They moved over to the sidelines and watched as the pink girl from before took her shoes off and a blonde boy stood facing the wrong direction. The moment the speaker blasted, the girl emitted a slime from her feet and skated along the track. Meanwhile, the blonde fired a laser from his belly button to launch himself over the track. That's kinda cool. Himiko's compliment vanished when the laser cut out and the boy dropped to the floor. Never mind. After hastily firing again, he finished second place. He looked back at his competitor. Firing my beautiful beam for more than a second hurts my tummy, he said, as if trying to look cool. That's a pretty big weakness, Ochako thought to herself, before hearing some faint noise. When she looked around, the source was the green-haired boy from the entrance exam. My turn, was the only warning Ochako received before Himiko took over. Wow, you're pretty observant, huh? She asked, startling him and making him blush. Oh well, I just thinks quirks are cool. He trailed off slightly and sorry. I'll try and keep it down. It's okay. Don't worry about it, Himiko reassured. I'm Ochako Uraraka. My name is Midoriya, Aizawa called out, interrupting the green-haired boy to the start line. Himiko, is it just me? Or does it seem like Mr. Aizawa is singling out Midoriya? Ochako asked nervously. You can see it too, then she replied, watching as the spiky blonde glared at Midoriya. The moment the start sounded, they both started running, only for the blonde to yell, burst speed, and set off loud explosions with both hands, propelling himself forward, but also blinding Midoriya for a moment. The blonde smirked arrogantly as he crossed the line in 14 seconds. Midoriya proceeded to cross the line in 7:02 seconds. He looked down at his smoking hands. My power has more uses than anyone else's in this school, he stated plainly, as if it was a fact. Midoriya stopped to catch his breath, his worried expression clearly visible. He gripped his knees tightly before standing upright. Aizawa just stared, unblinking. The rest of the SEAM tests passed by in rapid succession, and any time Himiko or Ochako tried to talk to Midoriya, Mr. Aizawa called for the class attention. This targeting of the green-haired boy was starting to piss both girls off. Before she knew it, the softball had come back around with everyone else besides her getting their turn. A tall girl with a black ponytail created a cannon and shot the softball over 900 meters. The explosion boy went next and launched the ball 705 meters. He started growling when it showed his score was below the tall girl's. Midoriya was called up next, his worried expression in clear view. I want to comfort him, said Himiko, but I think that would get us in trouble. I know, Ochako responded. Why isn't he using his quirk? When he destroyed the zero-pointer, he broke 3 limbs, Himiko answered. I'd try and avoid that too. You know, that's not what I meant, she replied. If Midoriya doesn't shape up soon, he's the one going home, the glasses-wearing boy said, pulling Ochako out of her conversation with Himiko. Huh, of course he is, the explosion boy said loudly. He's a quirkless loser. The hell does he mean by that? Himiko asked. He has a quirk, the tall boy defended. Did you not hear about what he did in the entrance exam? Midoriya grit his teeth and pulled his arm back, ready to throw the ball. He released the ball only for it to hit the ground 46 meters away. Midoriya looked down at his hands in utter disbelief. What gives? I was trying to use it just now, he asked himself. I erased your quirk, declared Aizawa, drawing everyone's attention, his scarf waving in the air as he glared at Midoriya. The judges for the exam were not rational enough. Someone like you should never be allowed to enroll at this school. Bastard! Himiko shouted in anger. Who gives him the right to judge any of us? What did he mean when he said, erased your quirk? Ochako asked. We can't let him use that on us. Wait, you did what to my? He gasped in realization. Those goggles, I know you. You can look at someone and cancel out their powers. The eraser hero, Eraserhead. Never heard of him, Himiko stated plainly. What about you? Nope, Ochako replied, the rest of class having a similar discussion. You're not ready, he said plainly. You don't have control over your power. Were you planning on breaking you bones again? Counting on someone else to save your useless body? No, that's not what I was trying to do. Midoriya's attempts to defend himself were cut off as Aizawa pulled him closer with his scarf. Ochako and the rest of the class weren't able to hear what Aizawa said next. He soon released Midoriya, his scarf returning to its place on his neck. I wonder if our teacher gave him some advice, wondered the tall boy. Probably told him to start packing, the loud blonde said dismissively. I'm here, Monsieur. the laser boy said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. Wait, who are you again? Ochako blurted out. Midoriya looked upset over what Aizawa had said to him, holding the ball tightly in his hand. He mumbled something to himself. He grit his teeth and looked up with a determined gaze. He pulled his arm back ready to throw. He leant forward to put as much force into the throw as possible. The moment the ball left his hand, it catapulted out of sight. Midoriya's body folded from the motion. Ochako gasped at the sight. Himiko was similarly flabbergasted at the display. Wow, Himiko muttered. Yeah, wow, Ochako replied intelligently. Mr. Aizawa, Midoriya called, drawing everyone's attention as he clenched his hand, showing a broken finger. You see, I'm still standing. This kid, Aizawa muttered. He threw it over 700 meters, one of the students exclaimed. That looks painful, Himiko said worriedly, looking at his broken finger and the tears in his eyes. Yikes, I'll take vomiting any day of the week, Ochako replied. His finger appears to be broken now, the tall boy observed, like in the exam. His quirk is very odd. It wasn't a very pretty throw, the laser blonde commented. The explosive boy stared on slack-jawed. A series of small pops going off in his hands. Hey, he yelled before charging forward. Deku, you bastard. Tell me how you did that or you're dead. Midoriya let out a small scream of fear before his attacker was restrained in Aizawa's scarf. What? He demanded. Why the hell is your damn scarf so strong? Because it's a capture weapon made out of carbon fiber and a special metal alloy. Aizawa answered calmly. Stand down. It would be wise to avoid making me use my quirk so much. It gives serious dry eye. That's a pretty big limit, Himiko commented. You're wasting my time now, he said, releasing his hold on the explosive boy. Whoever's next can step up. Midoriya nervously stepped around the other boy and came back to join the group. Ouch, Ochako commented, looking at his hand. Is your finger okay? Sure, I'm fine, he mumbled in reply. If you're sure, Midoriya, she said, just be careful, okay? Yeah, I'll try, he stuttered. Before the conversation could continue any further, Aizawa led the class back inside the gymnasium for the remaining tests. Ochako and Himiko made sure to stay with Midoriya to prevent him from hurting himself more. When final test, a distance run, finished, Midoriya dropped to the floor breathing heavily. Himiko couldn't tell if it was from exhaustion or pain. Regardless, Ochako helped him back to his feet. All right, time to give you your results, Aizawa announced. I've ranked you all from best to worst. You should probably have a good idea about your standing already. I'll just pull up the whole list. It's not worth going over each individual score. Aizawa pressed the remote in his hand, activating a holographic display of the class scores. Hey, we scored 7th. That's great. Himiko cheered. Wait, what about Midoriya? Ochako couldn't help but sigh in relief before looking at the display again and scanning through the other placements. Seeing at 20th place was Izuku Midoriya. And I was lying. No one is going home, Aizawa said bluntly, leaving the class speechless. That was just a ration deception, to make sure you gave it your all in the tests. I'm surprised the rest of you didn't figure that out, said the tall girl who made the cannon earlier. I'm sorry. I guess I probably should have said something. No shit, Himiko exclaimed, giving Ochako a slight headache. I'm just glad it's over, Ochako muttered with a sigh of relief. That's it, we're done for the day, Aizawa announced as he started to leave. Pick a syllabus in the classroom. Read it over before tomorrow morning. That's it? Himiko asked in disbelief. It's barely past noon. So, are we not going to learn about the school's facilities? Ochako wondered. I don't think he likes us. Midoriya, Aizawa called, drawing her attention in the process. Take this and go have the old lady fix you up. He handed a slip of paper to Midoriya. Things are going to be tougher tomorrow when your actual training begins. Make sure you're prepared. Hey Midoriya, do you want me to walk with you to the nurse's office? Ochako asked when noticed him staring at the paper nervously, startling him out of his thoughts. Oh, sure, he stuttered. Do you know the way there? Yeah, I had to explain something to Recovery Girl and Lunch Rush. She answered, rubbing the back of her head. Dietary requirements for my quirk. Oh, okay, I won't pry, he replied, as the two of them left the field. Be careful with your finger while you get changed, okay? She said before rushing over to the locker room. Midoriya is kinda cute, Himiko said teasingly. Himiko, stop, Ochako whined mentally. We just met him. I'm not saying anything. I just think he's cute, Himiko replied in a way that Ochako could hear her smirk. Why? Do you think he's boyfriend material? Ochako started to blush as she put her school uniform back on. Excuse me, are you okay? Asked a feminine voice. Upon turning around, Ochako could see it was the tall girl from before. Oh, I was just thinking about something, she replied. I'm Ochako Uraraka, by the way. I know, I'm Momo Yaoyorozu, she introduced herself. The other girls were looking to start a group chat for the 6 of us. Oh, that sounds great. One sec, she said happily, reaching into her bag for her phone. The other girls were making their way over when she turned back around. Hi, I'm Ochako Uraraka. Hiya, I'm Mina Ashido. The pink girl said cheerily. I noticed you asked the green-haired boy to walk with you to the infirmary. Well, I wanted to talk with him properly, Ochako answered. He got hurt trying to help me in the entrance exam. That's nice of you, said a girl with long green hair. I'm Tsuyu Asui. Call me Tsu. I'm Toru Hagakure. Nice to meet you, said a voice from the floating gym uniform. Hey, eyes up here. Sorry, Ochako replied with an embarrassed blush, which only increased when both Himiko and Toru giggled at her. And I'm Kyoka Gyro. The short-haired girl spoke up, absent-mindedly twirling one of her earphone jacks. So, you said something about a group chat? Ochako asked after everyone had introduced themselves. Yeah, it was my idea, answered Mina. The girls in my junior high homeroom had a chat room. It helped us get along. As the girls set it all up, Himiko couldn't help but get excited. I like these girls, they're great. Hey girls, I should warn you, Ochako started, drawing everyone's attention. My sister, Himiko, likes to take my phone off me. Why does she do that? Mina asked with a small frown. Well, my parents only adopted her this year, and she doesn't have any friends, Ochako explained. She's not a bad person. It's just that she faced some discrimination because of her quirk. That's terrible, sympathized Tsuyu. Quirk discrimination can really affect you. What kind of quirk does she have? Ochako, please, pleaded Himiko. I'd rather not say without her permission, Ochako said quietly. That's fine. I shouldn't have asked like that, Tsuyu replied. Right, excuse me please, said Ochako, heading for the room's exit. Waiting for her to arrive was a nervous Midoriya with a messily buttoned shirt and no tie. Hi Midoriya, thanks for waiting, she greeted. Why do you look like you fell into a merry-go-round? Well, I couldn't do my tie correctly, and it was hard to get the buttons on my shirt right with my finger like this. I'm sorry. That makes sense, Ochako scratched the back of her head nervously. I don't think I really got a chance to thank you. Thank me. For what? He exclaimed in surprise. In the entrance exam, when my leg got caught under some rubble, Ochako started. You rushed in to try and help, so thanks. You shouldn't really thank me. Anyone could have helped, he mumbled. Sure, anyone could have helped, she agreed. He sulked a little more. But they didn't, and you did. And that makes you a hero in my book. Tears pooled in his eyes at her words. You really mean that? He asked hesitantly. Of course, why wouldn't I? No one really supported me as a hero growing up, looking down on the quirkless kid. He muttered towards the end, but Himiko caught it. What does he mean quirkless? Himiko asked. Ochako, ask him please. What do you mean quirkless? Ochako's question startled him from his thoughts. What? I didn't. Oh look, we're here. He stuttered rapidly before spotting the nurse's office door. He quickened his pace, leaving the combined girls in a stunned shock. We must have really made him nervous, Himiko mumbled. Can you apologize for me, Ochako? Yeah, Ochako thought, do you think he's been? I hope not, Himiko answered. I think we should give him some privacy, Ochako thought with a small frown. Before they could leave, a startled shout caught their attention. Ochako rushed into the office to see Midoriya staring down at his now healed finger. Wow, thank you, that feels so much better, he said in astonishment. He suddenly slumped forward with half-lidded eyes. But I suddenly feel really tired. I need a nap. My quirk stimulates your ability to heal. But healing takes energy. It's not fault, that's just how the body works, Recovery Girl explained. Get too many big injuries, your stamina will be shot, and you'll die instead of healing, so be careful. Midoriya flinched violently. You mean this could kill me? He shrieked, and Ochako couldn't blame him. The hell kind of bedside manner is that? Himiko demanded, seriously. A doctor's job is to reassure the patient and not cause undue stress. You okay, Midoriya? She asked, startling him in the process. Most of the school is leaving now. Why, yeah, I just need to straighten up my uniform, he replied. I'll wait outside, she said quickly with a small blush. What? Don't want to help him with his clothes? Himiko teased. Shut up. You're not helping, Ochako yelled mentally. When Midoriya left the nurse's office, Ochako was ready to go home so she could talk to Himiko out loud. Midoriya, I wanted to apologize, she said softly, stunning the green-haired boy. I pressed a topic that you were uncomfortable with and made you nervous. It's okay, it's just. He trailed off, stifling a small yawn. My quirk came in late. Oh, I'm sorry if I brought up some bad memories, she apologized. I know that quirk status can lead to bad treatment. Ochako, can talk to him? Himiko asked in a small voice. Ochako didn't answer, but surrendered control. My sister has a blood quirk, and that didn't make for an easy childhood, Himiko started slowly. Oh, what does her quirk do? Does it affect her blood, or does it need to come from someone else? He asked before blushing brightly and backing away. Sorry. It's okay. It's actually nice to hear someone wanting to know, Himiko replied. Well, my cute sister's quirk is, when she drinks someone's blood, she can turn into them. A quirk like that would be perfect for underground or work. Does it come with some kind of immunity to blood-based diseases? He mumbled into a notebook that appeared in his hands. What? Himiko asked smartly. Can you slow down a bit, Midoriya? I think I heard a question in there somewhere. Oh, sorry, he stuttered. I really like to analyze quirks. Don't worry about it, Himiko reassured. Now if you ask one at a time, I think can answer some questions. But on one condition. What is it? You have to let me see your analysis, she replied, before absent-mindedly noticing they had left the front door of the school. As if he noticed their current location, he put his notebook away. Maybe I can ask later, he asked nervously. Sure, pass me your phone for a sec, please, Himiko smiled. He complied nervously, as if ready to bolt. In less than a minute, she handed it back. When he looked down, he saw a new contact labeled Ochako Uraraka. He looked back up at her in disbelief. Well, I need a way to contact my new friend, don't I? She smiled with her eyes closed, giving control back to Ochako. Here you change colors again, he muttered. But neither girl heard him. Wait, I'm your friend. Yep, it's already decided. We're friends now, Ochako grinned. Before the two of them could continue, the tall boy in glasses from class arrived and drew both of their attention. Oh, hey there, Ida, said Midoriya. How's the broken finger doing? He asked. Oh, it's doing fine thanks to Recovery Girl, answered Midoriya. Wow, I'm right here, Ida, Ochako remarked with a slight smirk. Oh, my apologies, he said with a formal bow. You are Uraraka, correct? Yep, I'm Ochako Uraraka, she confirmed, extending her hand in greeting. And you're Tenya Ada, right? Yes, I am, he said, shaking her hand. The group of three walking to the school's entrance. I was a bit concerned about Mr. Aizawa's approach to class, but I trust the school's judgment. UA is the top program. He crossed his arms. Even so, lying is downright immoral. I didn't like some of the things Mr. Aizawa said, Ochako said, with an annoyed look. It's like he was expecting us to act like pro-heroes already. I'm sure he has his reasons, Midoriya justified. Well, let's go. Don't want to miss our trains, do we? Ochako smiled. The three of them chatting for the rest of the walk. The second day of school was luckily much calmer than the first. After attendance, Mr. Aizawa simply went to sleep in his sleeping bag. The class was too nervous to really talk to each other. It was only when the teacher left the room, the tension left the class's shoulders. Geez, our teacher didn't really endear himself to us, huh? Himiko griped. What's our first lesson again? Hold on. Math, Ochako answered after checking her schedule. She checked the time they had between the end of homeroom and the first lesson, 5 minutes. You want to talk to anyone? Sue seemed nice. And we bring Ashido into the conversation as well, Himiko replied. Turning to the column of students on her right, she looked to the two girls sat together. Hi girls, any hopes for today? She asked awkwardly. No expulsion please, Mina pleaded, resting her head on her arms. Seriously, Mr. Aizawa made us think our whole career was over. I wasn't a fan of that either, commented Tsuyu. Normally I'd say that we shouldn't have to worry about today, but I know what you mean, Ochako sighed. After she learned about it, Himiko went on a rant about Mr. Aizawa. Oh, is Himiko your sister you mentioned yesterday? Mina asked, excited to learn more about her new classmate. Yeah, she actually helped me with my hero costume, so I'm looking forward to trying it out, Ochako smiled. Before the three could continue their conversation, the bell rang to signal the end of homeroom. We'll talk later, Kay. Ochako would chat with the other girls in between lessons throughout the day, and she sat with Midoriya and Ida during lunch. She could taste the familiar flavor of blood mixed into her soup, which was really nice of Lunch Rush to do. They would have to thank him after Izuku stopped fanboying. White rice is the perfect comfort food, isn't it? He asked rhetorically, giving a thumbs up to the three of them. Nimichem, this is super good. She hummed with her eyes closed before letting Himiko switch for a moment. I really like the soup as well, thank you, with her gratitude given she gave control back. Later in the afternoon, the lesson everyone in class had been waiting for had finally arrived. Hero training. Ochako couldn't help but be pulled into discussion with the students around her about who would be teaching these lessons. Names like Present Mike, Vlad King, Snipe and Mr. Aizawa were thrown around. Ochako did her best to ignore the way the short purple-haired boy said he wanted midnight. I am, a very familiar voice announced, drawing everyone's attention, coming through the door like a normal person, All Might said, posing in the room's entrance. The room was left in awe at the number one hero's appearance. Well, I can't believe it's really All Might, said a blonde boy behind her. Kaminari, if she wasn't mistaken. So he is a teacher. This year is going to be totally awesome, grinned Kirishima from the back row. Hey look, Tsuyu pointed. Is he wearing his Silver Age costume? I'm getting goosebumps. It's so retro, whispered Ojiro. She thinks. Welcome to the most important class at UA High. Think of it as Hero 101, All Might announced. From the front of the room. Here you'll learn the basics of being a pro, and what it means to fight in the name of good. Let's get into it. He posed for a moment before revealing a card in his head labeled Battle to the class. Today's lesson will pull no punches. Why is he posing so much? Himiko asked. Ochako had no answer. She absent-mindedly heard Bakugo excitedly declare, fight training. Izuku mumbled something but his voice was drowned out. But one of the keys of being a hero is looking good. All Might pointed at the wall, where several cases were being deployed from. These were designed for you based on your quirk registration forms and the request you sent in before school started. Everyone cheered. clearly excited to get their official hero costumes. "Get yourselves suited up and meet me at Training Ground Beta," said All Might with his signature smile. "Yes, sir." The entire class agreed together. Ochako was with the rest of the class, walking through the entrance tunnel to the training ground, squinting slightly due to the sun in her eyes. All Might was standing in front of them with his hands on his hips. "They say that clothes make the pros, young ladies and gentlemen. And behold, you are the proof," he announced with his trademark smile. "Take this to heart. From this moment on, you are all heroes in training." He looked over the gathered students. "It's getting me all revved up. You look so cool." His stance relaxed slightly. "Now, shall we get started? You bunch of newbies." Coming out of the tunnel behind the rest of the class was, "Hey, Midoriya." You're a Raka," he greeted in a startled tone. Midoriya's hero costume was a light teal bodysuit with white stripes down the sides. He had a full face with a pair of large bunny ears and a transparent mask on the lower half of his face. He also had a pair of white gloves, black elbow and knee pads, and a red belt to match his shoes. "Love your costume," she complimented. "Not too flashy, you know." I like your costume too," he stuttered, unable to maintain eye contact. Ochako's costume started with a sleeveless black unitard with a thick pink collar and a dark pink design on the chest that resembled a heart going down to her waist. She had a large white belt with a pink circular buckle and multiple storage compartments. She had a dark pink knee-length skirt that kept her left leg exposed. She had large white boots. On her wrists were white bracelets with pink handles on them. She was wearing a white jacket with a black trim and sleeves that ended halfway down her forearm. To complete the design was a white headpiece with a clear visor. "Thanks. Himiko could really make a clear picture," Ochako smiled. "I didn't have too many details in mind." She pointed at his mask for a moment. "I like the bunny ears. Are they a Mirko reference?" "I can see that," said Himiko quietly, as Izuku stuttered a reply with no answer. "Also, thank for complimenting my design skills. Now that you're ready, it's time for combat training," All Might announced. "Sir," Ida called out, revealing that he was wearing a full suit of armor. "This is the fake city from our entrance exam. Does that mean we'll be conducting urban battles again?" "Not quite. I'm gonna move you 2 steps ahead," he answered, holding up 2 fingers. "Most of the villain fights you see on the news take place outside. However, statistically speaking, run-ins with the most dastardly evildoers take place indoors." He paused so his words could soak in. "Think about it. Backroom deals, home invasions, secret underground lairs. Truly intelligent criminals stay hidden in the shadows." All Might then clenched his fist. "For this training exercise, you'll be split into teams of good guys and bad guys and fight 2-on-2 indoor battles." "Isn't this a little advanced?" questioned Tsuyu. "Tsu has a point. I thought we would just go through some obstacle courses. Get used to our costumes," said Himiko. "Me too," Ochako thought back. "The best training is what you get on the battlefield. But remember, you can't just punch a robot this time," All Might explained. "You're dealing with actual people now." His moment of silence opened a floodgate of questions from the class. "Sir, will you be the one deciding who wins?" Momo asked. "How much can we hurt the other team?" the explosion boy growled. Despite how many alarms the blonde's question brought up for her, Ochako asked, "Do we need to worry about the losers being expelled like earlier? Will you be splitting us up based on chance or comparative skill?" Ida asked with a raised hand. "Isn't this Cape Tres chic?" the sparkly blonde asked loudly. All Might had grit his teeth. "I wasn't finished talking," he grumbled. "Listen up." He pulled out a series of note cards. "The situation is this. The villains have hidden a nuclear missile somewhere in their hideout. The heroes must try to foil their plans. To do that, the good guys either have to catch the evildoers or recover the weapon. Likewise, the bad guys succeed if they protect their payload of capture the heroes." "Is it just me? Or does that sound like an old American movie?" Himiko asked. "Yeah, it does," Ochako answered. "I guess All Might doesn't just name his moves after America. Time's limited, and we'll choose teams by drawing lots. he announced, holding a yellow box labeled Lots. Isn't there a better way? Ida asked. Think about it. Pros often have to team up with heroes from other agencies on the spot. So maybe that's the reason we're seeing that here, Izuku replied. Yes, I see. Life is a random series of events, Ida replied before bowing to All Might. Excuse my rudeness. No sweat, let's draw, All Might declared, raising a fist into the air. When everyone had drawn their lots, All Might announced the teams. Team A is Izuku Midoriya and Ochalo Uraraka. Team B is Shoto Todoroki and Tenya Ida. Team C is Momo Yaoyorozu and Fumikage Tokoyami. Team D is Toru Hagakure and Ejiro Kirishima. Team E, Katsuki Bakugo and Mizo Shoji. Team F is Tsuyu Asui and Denki Kaminari. Team G, Kyoka Jiro and Minoru Mainta. Team H, Hantasiro and Yuga Aoyama. Team I, Mina Ishido and Rikido Sato. And Team J, Mashirawa Jiro and Koji Koda. Wow, what are the chances? We're a team, Ochako cheered, happy to have someone she already knew as her teammate. I declare that the first teams to fight will be… All Might trailed off, holding his hands in two boxes, a black one labeled Villain and a white one labeled Hero. These guys? He held up a white ball with B on it and a black ball labeled A. He placed his hands on his hips. Team B will be the heroes. Team A will be the villains. Everyone else can head to the monitoring room to watch. Yes, sir, the class said in unison. After the rest of the class left the grounds, leaving the teams for exercise behind, All Might led them over to a 5-story building. Bad guys, you can go on in and get set up, All Might instructed. In 5 minutes, the good guys will be let loose and the battle will start. Yes, sir, both teams said in agreement. Young Midoriya, young Uraraka, called All Might before they could enter the building. The key to being successful in this challenge is to embody villainy. Think from the perspective of an evildoer. I know it can hard given your goals. Ochako nodded in acknowledgement. If things go too far, I'll step in. The two of them marched through the building, finding the prop missile on the 5th floor. Do you think they expect us to memorize this building's floor plan? It's so big, Ochako complained, looking at the sheet of paper All Might gave her. You know, All Might is just as cool in person as he is on television. I'm glad he's not threatening with some kind of punishment like Mr. Aizawa. We can relax a little bit. I'm, a little worried about the match, Izuku said quietly. I get what you mean. I don't want to play the villain. But it's just for the exercise, Ochako replied. But if trust each other, we'll win this. Ochako, can I take lead for a second? Himiko asked. One sec, Ochako thought back. Reaching for the side of her headpiece, she flipped a small switch and the visor tinted, obscuring her eyes from view. Go ahead. What do we know about our opponents? Himiko asked. Well, we know Todoroki has an ice quirk, and he has a lot of control with it. We know this because of the quirk apprehension test yesterday. Izuku answered, noting Ochako's visor change, and Ida's quirk gives him super speed because of the engines in his legs. Which nout? Okay, so let's go over what we have, Himiko continued, breaking Izuku from his muttering spree. I have my anti-gravity quirk. I'm pretty strong and fast too. I can sneak around when I need to. She moved her skirt to the side to show her thigh, revealing a holster with knives on it. And I have these knives. Well, I don't really have good control of my quirk, so I have to try and work without it. He looked down as he replied, but I've taken notes on indoor battles and fighting in tight spaces. What did you do when using your quirk yesterday? Himiko asked. I saw that you only broke a finger compared to the entrance exam. Well, I kind of focused all of my quirk into my finger, he answered, rubbing the back of his head. But all that power is too much for my bones. Yikes. Well, I don't think 100% will be needed here, Himiko winced. Do you think that you can try to dial it down to the single digits? I can try, he answered. But I think I'll need more training to do that. That's why we're here, Himiko replied before giving control back to Ochako. Do you have any ideas for the exercise? Ochako asked. I kinda have nothing. Well, with Ida, it'll be best to keep the fight in tight quarters like the corridors, he answered, pulling out the notebook he had yesterday. As for Todoroki, I don't know if his ice is stronger than normal ice, so a frontal assault is probably a bad idea. So stealth for Todoroki and tight spaces for Ida, Ochako simplified. But we can't both go, or the missile will be undefended. Before the duo further detail the plan, All Might announced the start of the exercise. Within moments, the entire building was frozen across the floors and walls. Wow, I didn't think Todoroki had this much control over his ice, Izuku said in amazement. If we can free ourselves, we could use the ice to our advantage. Ochako grabbed one of the knives off her thigh holster and lightly tossed it to Midoriya. Here, explain it to me while we free ourselves, she said as she started chipping away at the ice her feet were stuck in. Well, Ida probably relies on his speed in combat, he explained, but with all the ice, he won't be able to get much traction, making him slip and leaving him vulnerable to capture. Ochako finished, dislodging her feet from the ice. But that still leaves Todoroki. Hopefully he'll be too confident he caught us with this opening move, Izuku replied, finally freeing his feet. I think we should stick together and face them together. But I think we need to capture Todoroki first, so we don't get trapped. Got it, Ochako replied, carefully walking over to the door to try and hear if the heroes were coming. I should have asked for some gloves, she muttered. When she could hear Ida asking Todoroki to slow down, she stepped to the side of the door. He's coming, she stage whispered to Izuku. Himiko, you're up, Ochako thought, letting Himiko take over. Himiko smiled at Izuku, giving a thumbs up before vanishing from his sight. Before he could voice his confusion, Todoroki opened the door to the room. Izuku quickly pretended like his feet were still trapped. Todoroki glared at Midoriya when he couldn't see anyone else in the room. Where is your partner? He asked coldly. Well, I don't know, he stuttered. She vanished. Before Todoroki could call it a lie, his legs were kicked out from under him, knocking him onto his back. In his dazed state, something pinned his hands over his head. When his vision cleared, he could see Ochako sitting on his chest, holding his wrists in a tight grip with one hand, the other holding a knife to his throat. Midoriya, I need you to use the capture tape, Himiko commanded, quickly before Ida gets here, please. All right. He carefully shuffled across the floor towards the two of them. Todoroki, Ida yelled from the end of the hallway beyond the door. He activated his engines and force started to push him along the ice. He occasionally slipped, delaying his progress, but he was advancing quickly nonetheless. Izuku hurried along to the door as best he could, knowing he wouldn't be able to wrap up Todoroki before Ida arrived. Before the taller boy could make it into the entrance, Izuku tackled him, the sudden force knocking them both to the floor with Ida on the bottom, sending them both sliding down the corridor. Get off of me, said Todoroki with a hard look. I don't think you're in a position to make demands, Himiko replied. You really put your teammate in a bad spot, Todoroki glared at her. I mean, really, last time I checked, running on ice is pretty hard. Ida struggled underneath Izuku as they slid. Midoriya landed a punch that knocked Ida's helmet loose. Before another blow could be thrown, the duo crashed into the wall, making Izuku fall of the taller boy. Step aside, villain, Ida ordered, slowly climbing to his feet. I will allow you to surrender peacefully, so I may stop your partner. That's not gonna happen, Izuku declared with steel in his voice, shakily taking a fighting stance. You leave me no choice, he said firmly, taking a step forward only to slip. Izuku wasted no time throwing another punch, knocking Ida's helmet off completely. Ida meanwhile grabbed a handful of Izuku's sleeve to stop his fall, tearing the costume in the process. After Ida hit the floor, activated his engines, causing him to spin and kick Izuku's legs out from under him. Izuku gasped in pain as he hit the floor. Ida's spin continued, coming back around for an overhead kick. Izuku quickly brought his arms together for an overhead block. He yelped when Ida's leg collided with his arms, sending him sliding back down the corridor they came from, the rough ride on the ice tearing at his costume more. Izuku was able to stop his trip by grabbing an empty side doorway. He shakily climbed back to his feet. The upper body of his costume was shredded, and the mask referencing All Might's smile was gone. "You put up a good fight, villain," said Ida, slowly walking towards him, "but it is time for you to surrender." "And I told you, that's not gonna happen," Izuku glared, trying to focus on one for all. Think about percentages, he thought. He could feel the power flow though his arm, but winced when it started to hurt. Dial it back. Dial it back. He concentrated on the feeling, pushing lower and lower until the pain started to fade away to a dull ache. When he looked up, he saw that Ida had made it close to him, using his engine as propulsion. "It'll have to do," he thought before throwing a punch into the oncoming boy's stomach. Ida attempted to block the attack, but was clearly unprepared for the increase of strength. Izuku's punch made it through the guard and knocked the wind from the taller boy's lungs. Ida, gasping for breath, fell back onto the floor. Izuku acted quickly and pulled the roll of capture tape from the pouch on his belt and wrapped it around Ida's arms. "Tenya, Ida is captured," All Might declared over the speaker. "Sorry, Ida," Izuku said, before making his way back to Ochako and Todoroki. "Tenya, Ida is captured," All Might declared over the speaker. "Told ya, Midoriya would win," Himiko grinned. "Looks like you lost." Todoroki glared up at her. "You know, that look would probably be more effective without the robo-ice eye." Before she could taunt him further, Izuku stumbled back through the doorway. "Sorry, I'm late," he said, out of breath. "I used my capture tape on Ida." "Use mine. Left side compartment on my belt," Himiko replied, without looking away from the boy under her. What? Ochako and Izuku squeaked in unison. "Midoriya, please just tie him up," Himiko ordered. His entire face was red as he slowly moved over and took her capture tape from the compartment she said it was in. Afterwards, he moved over to Todoroki and wrapped the tape around the boy's arms. "Shoto Todoroki is captured. Villain team wins," All Might announced over the speaker. With that declaration, Himiko sighed, moving off of Todoroki and putting her knife back in its holster. "I'm sorry I yelled at you, Midoriya," she apologized, turning to face her teammate, only to blush a vibrant red when she could see his shredded hero costume and the muscles that were hidden underneath the baggy clothing. "Ochako, you can take this one." That was the only warning Ochako received before being thrust back into the driver's seat. I think we should go." "Yep, we should go to All Might," she stuttered before leaping back to her feet and hurrying out of the building. "Himiko, how could you do that to me?" Ochako yelled mentally. "I'm sorry, I panicked," Himiko whined. "But he has that cute face with those hot muscles." "Please don't talk about the muscles," Ochako said, while trying to push away the mental image. Eventually, she was waiting outside the building for the others to join her. "Are you all right, young Uraraka?" All Might asked from beside, startling her from her thoughts. "Why, yeah, I'm all right, sir," Ochako replied. "Just thinking." She blushed again as the image of Izuku's muscles popped up in her head. "Well, here come your classmates. Let's go review your work," he said calmly. "Looking at our action with others can help us grow." As the two teams watched the footage of their match, Ochako noticed Izuku taking notes out of the corner of her eye. Now, because it wasn't clear-cut, "Who do you believe the MVP of the exercise was?" All Might asked the class. "I have an answer for you, sir," said Momo, raising her hand. "I believe it was Uraraka." She acted quickly and precisely at all times. She gave one of her knives to Midoriya at the start of the match so they could free themselves from Todoroki's ice. When he arrived overconfident of his victory, she attacked him from behind and pinned him in a way that gave no way out without injuring himself. "A very good answer, young Yaoyorozu," All Might praised. "Does anyone else want to share their thoughts on the others' performances?" "I think that was pretty cool of Midoriya to take Ida head-on like that," said Kirishima with a grin. "Especially since he wanted to protect his teammate from Ida." "I didn't really think it through," Izuku admitted sheepishly. "I kinda just moved without thinking." "That just makes it manlier," Kirishima complimented. "A hero should always move, keep others safe." Todoroki got too full of himself after freezing the building, shrugged Kaminari. Don't get me wrong, it was really awesome. But he let his guard down really quickly. Ida, I think your ice skating was kinda cool, Mina smiled. I think you need a little more practice though. Thank you, Ashido. I shall endeavor to improve my mobility in unusual environments, Ida replied. All right then, the next match will be. All Might walked over to the hero and villain boxes again, these four. He held up a black I and white J, showing who would be what role. Now think about everything we saw and discussed as you tackle this training for yourself. Yes, sir. Everyone nodded. Mina, Sato, Ojiro, and Koda left with All Might to next battle building. Soon enough, the second round of the exercise began. The monitor showed Mina and Sato were saying something to each other before nodding, and Mina left the room. Skating on her acid slime, she spread out the acidic substance across the corridors. That's pretty smart of Ashido, Ochako said quietly. What do you mean, Uraraka? Ida asked, with Midoriya giving a curious look. Well, she's spreading her acid across a large area, Ochako pointed out. Not only does that make it harder for the heroes to move around, because it's spread out instead of focused in one spot, it doesn't damage the building as much. Izuku quickly wrote down her words, much to her embarrassment. Very good assessment, Uraraka complimented Momo. How exactly did you know that? My parents run a construction company, she answered. So I know what building needs to stay standing. Hero team begin. All Might announced for everyone to hear. Mina knew she couldn't finish Operation Slip and Slide. Moving as could, she spread her strongest acid on the stairs and started moving back towards the weapon room. A quick glance back showed the stairs were melting. Let's see them get past that, she thought with a grin, skating back to the way she came. Mina and Sato waited with the missile for the remaining time of the exercise. No one coming to bother them as they chatted about their interests. Time's up, came All Might's voice from the speaker. Villain team wins. I think I overdid it with all the acid, Mina admitted sheepishly. Don't worry about it. We got an easy win for it, Sato said reassuringly. I don't think it would be unfair to say that young Ishida was the MVP of this match. All Might said calmly. Does anyone else have thoughts? Izuku started quietly, only to freeze when everyone turned to him. Do you have something to share, young Midoriya? He asked. Everyone's opinion is perfectly valid in this exercise. Well, I noticed that Ojiro and Koda seemed to be hesitant to use their quirks to move around the acid traps. Izuku started slowly, and neither of them seemed to have room for support gear that could have helped them get around Ishido's acid. An excellent point. Support gear is very important to help move around our weaknesses, All Might nodded. They also could have launched an assault from the next building over. Bakugo seemed to grumble something as Midoriya spoke. Moving on to the third round, All Might announced, reaching into the hero and villain boxes. Here are the teams. He held up a white C ball and a black D ball. Toru, Kirishima, Momo, and Takoyami nodded before leaving for battle building C. Kirishima would be best to tas defensive given office quirk. Izuku muttered to himself. Hagakura's bestoption is stealth with her invisibility. You're not wrong about that, Midoriya Gyro said in agreement, startling the boy from his thoughts. Why, you heard that? He asked quietly. Yeah, I've got sensitive hearing due to my quirk, she answered, twirling one of her earphone jacks. What about Yaoyorozu and Takoyami? Weller, splitting up would work out best if Hagakure and Kirishima split up, Izuku replied, slowly sounding more sure of himself. But if the villain team goes on the offensive, it could turn into a mess. He flipped to different page. Takoyami will be hard to defeat in a tight space like this. Dark Shadow can protect him from pretty much any direction. If Yaoyorozu has prep time, she could turn any location into an impenetrable bunker. In this scenario, she'll have to think on her feet. Wow, you know your stuff, Midoriya said Ochako. The rest of the class staring at the green-haired boy. So if the teams were switched? Yaoyorozu and Takoyami would win with little to no difficulty, Izuku answered bluntly. Them being the hero team gives Kirishima and Hagakure a chance. Shut up, well said, young Midoriya, praised All Might. Interrupting Bakugo. Oftentimes luck will give us an advantage or disadvantage when facing villains. Hey Kirishima, Toru called, getting the redhead's attention. Let's get serious. I'm gonna take off all my clothes and totally disappear. What? He asked in disbelief. You, just don't look okay, she stuttered in embarrassment. So what's the plan? He asked, looking away, his face as red as his hair. I'll move on ahead to surprise the other team. You protect the weapon, she said before leaving the room. I hope she was joking about the clothes thing, he thought to himself. Look alive, kids. Show us you're the embodiment of good. Or evil, All Might announced a little awkwardly. Let's go. Yaoyorozu. I'll take the lead, Takoyami said as the duo entered the building, dark shadow peeking out from under his cloak. I was about to suggest that. Let me know of any gear we need, Momo replied. We should stay alert for Hagakure. We won't know where she's hiding. The heroes in training moved through the building on high alert. Dark shadow periodically destroying the lights on the ceiling. Tension was high when they made it to the 4th floor with no encounters. Takoyami moved through a doorway to continue his search for the missile. Before Momo could follow him, something wrapped around her, pinning her arms to her sides and dragged her into another room. Thinking quickly, Momo jumped sideways, landing her right hip. She heard a gasp of pain and managed to break free of the sneak attack. Yaoyorozu, where are you? Takoyami asked through her earpiece. I'm all right, she answered. Hagakure took me by surprise and dragged me into a side room. You head for Kirishima. I'll catch up as soon as I can. Okay. You know, that was pretty rude of you to ignore me, Yaoyorozu, Hagakure said slowly. You're gonna make me cry. You've got my full attention now, said Momo, creating a flashlight, although you might that regret it. She shined the light all around the room. It reflected back at her, briefly dazzling her. Before she could recover, she was punched in the gut. With the air knocked out of lungs, she couldn't attempt a defense, thus resulting in a slap across the face. Acting as quick as she could, she lashed out with her left hand, while focusing on creating a staff with her right. With her new staff in hand, she swung widely and smirked when she heard a pained grunt. Momo's smirk disappeared when she was unable to pull her pole arm back. A brief tug of war occurred between the two of them before a kick to the gut made her let go to nurse her stomach. Sorry, Yaoyorozu, but you can't beat me, Hagakure sighed. You're just gonna get hurt if you don't surrender. I can't build a proper defense because I can't see her attacks, Momo thought with a frown. Think. What can I make to turn the tide? That's it. The taller girl concentrated on the formula in her mind, watching the staff in Hagakure's hand to keep track of her movements. When her opponent moved, Momo leapt back and spread her arms, releasing the flower she had made in as wide of an area as possible. The now visible girl dropped the staff and started coughing loudly. Yaoyorozu wasted no time in sweeping the girl's legs out from under her before quickly binding the girl's arms with the capture tape. Toru Hagakure has been captured, All Might announced for everyone to hear. Momo sighed, backing away from her opponent to catch her breath. You were tough to beat, Haga. She paused, blushing brightly. Hagakure, are you naked? It didn't take long for Takoyami to notice his teammate's absence. He activated his earpiece to contact her. Yaoyorozu, where are you? Takoyami asked. I'm all right, she answered. Hagakure took me by surprise and dragged me into a side room. You head for Kirishima. I'll catch up as soon as I can. Okay. He moved to hurry so that they could win the exercise. I'm sure she'll be all right, Fumi, Dark Shadow said reassuringly. You saw how good she did on Aizawa's test yesterday. You're right. Thank you, Dark Shadow, he replied. He approached a closed door at the end of the hallway. I think this is it. Be ready. You got it, the quirk replied, giving a thumbs up. Takoyami tried to open the door, only for it to remain shut. Want me to break it down? The bird-headed boy merely nodded, taking a couple steps back. Toru Hagakure has been captured, All Might announced for everyone to hear, making the duo smile before they focused on the task at hand. Dark shadow charged through air, hitting the door hard. A loud screeching was heard as everything was pushed away from the damaged entranceway. The dark duo moved forward before their opponent could mount a response, crossing the threshold they prepared to fight. Stood in the room's center ready to fight was Kirishima. His arms hardened up to a stone-like material. "You're not getting past me," he yelled, charging towards them. Dark Shadow met his attack head-on. Upon catching the redhead's fists, Dark Shadow had to suppress a wince, keeping a firm grip on the hands to prevent any kind of retreat. "What's your plan now, tough guy?" the quirk taunted, only to release an undignified squawk when Kirishima attacked with a vicious headbutt. "Oh, that hurt," Dark Shadow yelled, grabbing the hardened boy by the head and slamming him into the ground. "The weapon has been captured. Hero team wins," All Might announced through the speakers, interrupting the fight between Kirishima and Dark Shadow. The two combatants looked at the tail connected to the quirk to see it leading to Takoyami, who had simply placed a hand on the fake bomb. "Hey, sorry about the headbutt," Kirishima apologized, after climbing back to his feet. "Thanks," Dark Shadow said with acceptance. "I'm sorry about the whole head slam thing." "Don't worry about it, I'm fine," the redhead replied, waving it off. "My quirk protected me, just like you protect Takoyami." When Kirishima, Takoyami, and Dark Shadow reached the outside of the building, All Might stood waiting for them. "Hello, All Might," Dark Shadow waved cheerfully. "Hello," he greeted back. "Are young Yaoyorozu and young Hagakure still inside?" When he received nods, he went in to look for them. Eventually, he could hear faint chatter behind a closed door. He knocked to get their attention. "The exercise is over. It's time to head back now." "We have a bit of a problem," All Might Momo replied. "Hagakure is, well, naked," she squeaked at the end. Could you repeat that?" "I think I misheard you," All Might asked awkwardly. "I'm naked, sir," Hagakure answered. "But Yaoyorozu covered me in flour, so I'm kind of exposed." "Here, use this," he said while removing his cape from his costume. Looking away from the door, he heard said door open before his cape was pulled from his hand. "We're ready to go now, sir," Yaoyorozu said quietly. Hagakure wrapped up in the large cape. All Might nodded. "Will you be all right to do your performance review, or would you like to go change?" he asked calmly. "I'd like to do the review first," Hagakure answered. "After that, could I go get changed?" "Of course," he replied. The group finally returned to the monitoring room. This was a different match compared to the others. Would anyone like to discuss the MVP? "Yes, sir, I think it was Takoyami," Midoriya spoke up, looking a little less nervous than earlier. He kept in front so Dark Shadow could protect them from an oncoming attack. Even though Yaoyorozu got separated, he contacted her quickly to get her status. And when Dark Shadow had Kirishima distracted, Takoyami secured the weapon. "Very good, young Midoriya," All Might praised. Would anyone else like to say something? Hagakure had a pretty good idea to sneak up on Yaoyorozu and separate her from Takoyami. "I think a 2-on-2 would end badly," said Gyro. "Why are you wearing All Might's cape?" "Well, we had a costume malfunction, so All Might gave me his cape for cover," Hagakure answered, glad no one could see her nervous expression. "This is really warm, sir." "It was designed to function as an emergency thermal blanket," All Might answered. Ochako could have sworn Izuku's eyes were glowing as he wrote that down in his notebook. "Hagakure, I have a question," spoke Midoriya. Hagakure simply nodded. The flower in her hair made the movement visible. "How did you reflect the light from Yaoyorozu's flashlight back at her?" "I don't know what you mean," she answered, confused. When Yaoyorozu looked around the room with her flashlight, for a moment the light bounced back at her. He explained, "I figured that was an aspect of your quirk. If it was, I didn't know about it." She answered quietly, "All Might, can I go and get changed?" "Yes, you may," he answered. Your classmates will fill you in on anything you miss. Hagakure left the room, as All Might went to draw the next lots. Moving on, the next teams to fight will be. He pulled out a white F and a black E. All Might looked down at the letters and saw they were sequential like all the others. I'm not doing this on purpose, I swear. Teams E and F, let's go. Tsuyu, Kaminari, and Shoji simply followed after All Might. Bakugo, on other hand, looked ecstatic to finally have a chance to fight. I hope Isui and Kaminari will be okay? Midoriya asked quietly, his previous confidence vanishing. What do you mean, Midoriya? Ochako asked. Weller, Kachin is pretty strong, and he doesn't really know how to hold back. He stuttered. I don't want to see anybody get hurt too much. You shouldn't worry, Midoriya. Isui and Kaminari passed the entrance exam just like we did. So they are not incompetent, Ida replied, chopping the air. And I'm sure All Might will interfere should anything go wrong. Bakugo was clearly annoyed. All Might should let me put the nerd in his place. He thought I'll just deal with Bug Eyes and Sparky. Then that nerd will know he can't beat me. He ignored what his teammate was trying to say. Waiting for the exercise to begin, I bet he thinks he's hot shit for his lucky win against Four Eyes. Before Bakugo could work himself into a deeper frenzy, All Might announced the round to begin. With a loud explosion, he launched himself down the corridor, proceeding to the lower levels to meet his opponents head-on. You sure this is a good plan? Kaminari asked nervously. You could beeline for the weapon. If they stay in the bomb room, I'll have to face them both alone, Tsuyu answered from the ceiling. It'll be better to stick together until we know what's happening. I mean, all right, he shrugged. But be careful when I activate my quirk. Wouldn't want to fry you. The duo kept a quiet approach as they moved up to third floor. They'd barely made it down the corridor when the sound of explosions hit them, steadily growing louder and louder. That sounds like Bakugo, Tsuyu mumbled. Get ready, Kaminari. Within moments, Bakugo came blazing around the corner with a vicious smirk. Hope you're ready to die, Sparky, he growled. After, you can tell me where Bug Eyes is hiding. An explosion from both palms sent him flying towards the scared blonde. Isui wasted no time in launching at an angle to intercept the villain of the exercise. She spun around to reorient herself, planting both feet into the explosive boy's face. The kick sent both parties back, Tsuyu in controlled manner that allowed her to land next to her partner. Bakugo, on the other hand, was sent crashing into a wall. Thanks, Isui, Kaminari sighed. I don't think he's down, she replied, and call me Tsu. True to her words, Bakugo glared at the two of them fiercely. You're gonna regret that, he declared, his hands releasing small pops like firecrackers. He came charging at them without his explosions propelling him this time. Tsuyu retaliated in kind, jumping back and forth on the corridor walls to make her attack less predictable. Kaminari swallowed his nerves and charged forward as well. A one-handed explosion sent Bakugo into the air, allowing him to shoulder barge the airborne frog girl. Before he could follow up, Kaminari grabbed his legs and pulled back to the ground. Before Bakugo could break free from his grip, he activated his quirk, electrifying the explosive boy. Staying within his voltage limit, he punched Bakugo in the stomach with an electrified fist. Isui had hopped around the room getting behind Bakugo, pulling out her capture tape. The moment Kaminari stopped his quirk, she wrapped it around the false villain's legs. Katsuki, Bakugo has been captured, All Might announced over the speakers. Kaminari wasted no time moving on, leaving Bakugo stood in a stunned silence. As if the scenario he was in was impossible, he stared at the backs of the two other students and clenched his fist. Bakugo, if you do what I think you're thinking, you will have detention, All Might said sternly through his earpiece. Katsuki, Bakugo has been captured, All Might announced over the speakers. Shoji knew he was now at a huge disadvantage, now that Bakugo had been eliminated. He continued barricading the door to the room. While it hadn't worked so well in the previous match, but he knew his opponents didn't have the same raw power Takoyami and Dark Shadow had. He kept a couple ears out to monitor for intruders. Eventually, he could voices outside the door, It's stuck, Kaminari complained. What do we do now? Asui was quiet for a moment. Follow me, she whispered. He could then hear footsteps growing steadily quieter. Kaminari was confused the entire time he followed his partner. Asui didn't elaborate, but led him to the roof. What are we doing up here? He asked, a little worried. I'm gonna lower you down to look through the windows, she explained. When you see Shoji, climb through, and I'll be right behind you. What? He yelped. That's a terrible idea. What would you even use? My tongue, she answered bluntly. Kaminari stared at her in disbelief. My tongue can extend up to 20 meters and can hold things a little above my body weight, she elaborated. All right, just be careful. I build up static easily, Kaminari sighed. Tsuyu nodded before wrapping her tongue around her partner's waist. She lifted him off the ground and lowered him down the side of the building. The first couple of windows revealed empty rooms. The fourth window let Kaminari see Shoji in the room. Kaminari grabbed the window ledge and started to climb through, Asui's tongue releasing him easily. Kaminari made a break for the missile, hoping to win the match. Only for Shoji grab a plank of wood and swing it at him. Crap, he exclaimed, skidding to a halt, just barely avoiding the improvised weapon. You won't sneak past me, he declared. Neither will you, Asui. He swung the plank at the ceiling, forcing the frog girl to jump down. I don't think you can beat us 2-on-1, Kaminari smirked. I don't have to, Shoji replied. I just have to waste your time. He's right, Kaminari, Tsuyu frowned. We have to face him head on. If either of us gets a chance, run to the bomb. Kaminari charged straight at Shoji, keeping himself low to the floor. Asui moved with him across the ceiling, splitting their opponent's focus as best they could. Shoji created multiple arms off himself to extend to the ceiling, before sweeping his plank across the floor, attempting to knock the electromancer off his feet. Kaminari dove forward, tackling Shoji's legs, distracting enough for Tsuyu to leap from the ceiling and kick him in the face like she did to Bakugo. The combination of attacks, Shoji was knocked onto his back. As quickly as he could, Kaminari pulled the capture tape from his pocket and wrapped it around Shoji's legs. Mizo Shoji has been captured. Hero team wins, All Might announced through the speakers. You okay, man? Kaminari asked, offering a hand to help Shoji to his feet. Yeah, I lost, but I'm okay, he answered, taking the offer. We should head back. The round 4 teams returned to the monitoring room, Bakugo staying in a state of stunned disbelief the entire time. All right, class, I want to announce that the MVP of this round is young Asui. All Might smiled. However, I would like to commend young Shoji's efforts. Thank you, sir, the tall boy nodded. I feel like I could have performed better, though. You are here to learn and improve. You can't be expected to get everything right away, All Might said calmly. The reason young Asui is the MVP here is because she was able to remain calm in the face of adversity, provide help to her teammate, and reassure him of any doubts he was having. Thank you, sir, Tsuyu croaked. I did my best. I think that was amazing, Tsu, Ochako beamed. You gotta teach me that ceiling drop kick. Tsuyu blushed at the praise before smiling brightly. I think you did a commendable job, Shoji, Ida praised, chopping his hand through the air. Even if you were a villain, you treated the task seriously. Thank you, Ada. I felt I should do my best regardless of the role I was assigned, he replied. Kaminari improved as the exercise went on, said Momo. Despite his shaky beginning, he didn't hesitate when his partner needed help. Thanks, the blonde replied with an embarrassed blush. I'm just glad I had someone smart as a teammate. Thank you, Kaminari, Itsu replied with a small blush. I appreciated your help too. Honestly, I think Bakugo made the same mistake Todoroki did, Ochako spoke up. He believed he was going to win easily and underestimated his opponents. Bakugo remained silent. Toru walked back into the observation room, cleaned from the flour, and wearing her school uniform again. What did I miss? She asked, handing All Might's cape back to him. Tsu and Kaminari beat Bakugo and Shoji, Mina answered with a grin. Tsu and Kaminari were the heroes. I believe it's time to begin the final match, All Might announced, reaching into both boxes and removing a white H and a black G, and holding for the group to see. Gyro, Mainta, Shiro, and Aoyama left the observation room. What exactly does your quirk do? Gyro asked when the duo were in the bomb room. I've got these sticky balls, he answered, pulling one of his head. Their strength varies. Depending on how I'm feeling, they might stick to something a whole day. He placed it on a support column and pressed on it slightly. They grow back as fast as I can pull them off. But I'll bleed if used too many. He dropped his hand back to his side. Oh, and they don't stick to me. I just bounce right off them. That's it? Gyro asked bluntly. I was expecting more. Well, more. Oh yeah, what can you do? Mainta yelled, stomping his feet. My jacks can extend a few meters. I can piece concrete with them and pump my heartbeat into whatever I'm plugged into. She answered with a straight face. I can also detect what's going on around me due to vibrations traveling back to me. All right, everyone. It's time for the last round to begin, All Might announced over the speakers. Damn it, Gyro cried, immediately crouching and stabbing her jacks into the ground. After a moment, she looked at Mainta. Quick, help me seal the windows. What? Why? He asked, confused. She pulled her jacks back and stood up. Because Shiro is climbing up the side of the building, she answered with a growl. She held up a wooden board to the window. Come here and get to work. Mainta ran over with a ball in each hand, sticking the ends of the board to the wall. Thinking on his feet, he started putting balls on the outer edge of the window. He can't climb in now. Deal with the other windows. I'll track Aoyama and Shiro down, Gyro ordered, and crouched down and stabbed her jacks back into the ground. Geez, bossy much, he muttered, only for Gyro to give him a very fierce glare. I mean, I'm on it. After a couple minutes, Mainta stumbled to the center, a little blood dripping from his scalp. Gyro looked at him with concern. You good? Why, yeah. Where are they? He mumbled, sitting down for a moment. Well, Shiro has climbed back down to the 4th floor, and he's talking to Aoyama through his earpiece, she answered. Aoyama is coming on to the 3rd floor now. She looked at the double doors that led into the room. Do you think you can put a couple balls on the doors to seal them? Why, yeah. But I think I'll be out of commission afterwards, he replied. Right, never mind then. Try and hold out and get ready to fight if they get in here, said Gyro, and stood up. I'm gonna go out there and try to stop them from getting here. Hey Midoriya, what do you think their plan is? OCHAKO asked, watching the silent monitors. Mainta's quirk trapped the windows so Shiro and Aoyama can only take a front approach, he answered. Writing in his notebook, Gyro seems to be tracking the other team's movements. My best guess is through vibrations caused Aoyama and Shiro's movements. What led you to that conclusion, young Midoriya? All Might asked with a raised eyebrow. The rest of the class silent and waiting for the answer. Earlier, Gyro mentioned her sensitive hearing, so that shows her quirk is sound-based. When she plugged her jacks into the building's floor, I think she did it so that vibrations that travel throughout the building, no matter how faint, will reach her. He wrote down every word as he said them. Honestly, Gyro's quirk makes her perfect for reconnaissance work. The room was stunned silent until OCHAKO spoke up. Like I said yesterday, you have to let me see your analysis because that was cool. No, it was nothing, Izuku stammered. I have to disagree, Midoriya said Momo. That was a very good breakdown of Gyro's quirk, and you've had minimal exposure to it. Heroes will pay good money for quality analysis like that, young Midoriya, said All Might, drawing everyone's attention. Quirk analysis is very valuable and could help people even you couldn't. He smiled to the class. I recommend you only share your analysis with those you trust until you receive professional advice. Yes, sir. Gyro routinely stopped to listen for Shiro and Aoyama's locations. If she could take one of them out, Mainta could keep the weapon safe. Knowing one of the heroes, likely Shiro with the lighter footsteps, was around the next corner, she took a couple steps back and positioned her jacks next to the speakers on her boots, ready to plug in and attack. When walked around the corner, he barely widened his eyes in surprise when Gyro attacked. The sound waves pushing him back into the wall, he grunted pain, covering his ears to block out as much noise as he could. Gyro let up her assault for a moment. "Give up," she yelled, giving him a chance to surrender. Not knowing when the next attack would occur, Zero shot his tape down the hall towards her and launched his own attack. Gyro barely jumped out the way of his knee. Crap. He can move pretty fast with that tape, she thought. And I don't have a lot of close-range options. She sighed. I can't track Aoyama down now either. Watching Zero carefully, she plugged her jacks in again and launched another sound wave barrage. The tape user was prepared this time and shot his tape down the left corridor, pulling himself away from the attack's path. Gyro waited for a moment before leaping out from the corner, blasting sound waves as soon as she had a steady stance. The rhythmic beating of her heart echoed down the corridor. Her confident expression soon changed to one of confusion when she saw the empty hallway. She unplugged her jacks and decided to look for where he could be hiding. Before she could move far, tape landed on her shoulder and yanked her to one side. As she stumbled, she saw Zero drop down from the ceiling. Looking up revealed several tape handholds that he used to stay up there. Before she could regain a steady stance, Zero taped her to wall. She sent her extending jacks down towards her boots in an attempt to counterattack. Zero's eyes widened in a panic. Aoyama has secured the weapon. All Might announced through the speakers. Hero team wins. Gyro retracted her jacks with a sigh. She looked at Zero. Can you get me down? She asked. Yeah, 1 sec, he replied, rubbing one of his ears, just waiting for the ringing to stop. Sorry. It didn't take long after Gyro had left him alone with the weapon before Minta had closed the double doors and sealed the shut with his balls. His scalp was bleeding heavier than before, so he stumbled up to the weapon before sitting down against it. Heh, no one is getting in here, he chuckled to himself. Minutes went by, and he could faintly hear a beat coming from somewhere in the building. As he was about to call Gyro to check on her, the door handle rattled. You aren't getting in here, he called with a cocky laugh. I sealed that door shut. His laugh died in his throat as a shining blue laser cut through the door, melting the balls it came into contact with. The door swung open, revealing Aoyama, his belt still lit up with his quirk. Honestly, you should have known. You could not keep my splendor at bay for long, he said with smile. Now stand aside. You do not look up to fighting. Minta made a valiant charge at the sparkly boy, stumbling as he did so. Aoyama simply fired his naval laser, cutting a crescent shape into the floor. The purple-haired boy tripped in the hole, landing flat on his face. Aoyama strode past him and simply placed his hand on the fake missile. Aoyama has secured the weapon. All Might announced through the speakers. Hero team wins. The final 2 teams were gathered back in the observation room to review their match with the class. Some bandages had been wrapped around Minta's head after being reassured that his injuries weren't too severe. I believe that went very well, students. Now, does anyone have a recommendation on who the MVP was? All Might asked. Ida raised his hand to give his thoughts. Go on, young Ida. I believe Zero was the MVP of the match, sir, he replied. He attempted an alternate route to the weapon to end the exercise quickly. Upon coming to an unknown obstacle, he retreated to the 4th floor and held off Gyro so Aoyama could get to weapon room using a different path. A fair assessment, young Ida. The hero nodded. Does anyone else have any opinions they wish to share? Midoriya looked as if he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Himiko decided to give a hand. Ochako, you should see if Midoriya's tracking idea was right. Hey Gyro, were you tracking Zero though movement vibrations? Ochako asked with a grin, liking Himiko's plan. Yeah, she answered with a surprised look. How did you know? Midoriya figured out how your quirk worked and explained to the rest of us. Wow, I never would have guessed that, Gyro replied, giving the green-haired boy a look. I have to say, I liked you sealing maneuvers, Zero, said Momo. Did you get the idea from Asui's match? Yeah, he answered with an embarrassed smile. I didn't really know what else to do against Gyro, to be honest. I think you did great, Zero, Kirishima beamed. And Minta. That was super manly to try and stop Aoyama, even though you were bleeding. Yeah, I was pretty cool, wasn't I? Minta smirked, rubbing his nose with his finger. Until you tripped and landed on your face, dude, commented Kaminari, the other boy's face dropping. I was quite spectacular, wasn't I? Aoyama asked. So how strong is the tape you make? Sato asked Zero. Depends on how thick I make it, he answered. If it's thick enough, it can support my weight. Want to know my battle plan? Aoyama tried again. So you figured out my quirk. Because I said I've got sensitive hearing, how? Gyro asked Midoriya. Well, the sensitive hearing sounds like a side effect to a sound-based quirk, Izuku answered. And when you stabbed your jacks into the floor, it seemed like you were connecting to the building to hear everything happening. And sound is based on vibrations traveling through the air and along surfaces. So I assumed you allowed the vibrations to travel into you. Yeah, that's exactly how it works, Gyro replied, stunned at how quickly he broke down her quirk. Wasn't my laser beautiful? Aoyama asked again. Yeah, it wasn't bad, Mina answered with a shrug. All right, everyone, follow me, ordered All Might. Taking the class back outside to the tunnel they entered from originally, a whistle-like bell sounded out for all of the students to hear. That's a wrap, super work, All Might declared, putting his hands on his hips. You really stepped up to the plate, and we didn't have any major injuries at all. You should be proud. Excellent first day of training all around. The hero gave a thumbs up to the 20 students before him. It's nice to hear some encouraging words after our homeroom class, said Tsuyu. A few students nodding along. Mr. Aizawa was kind of a buzzkill. I'm happy to bring such staggering positivity to my alma mater, All Might announced with his trademark smile. That's all for now, folks. I need to go for now. He waved at the students. Now watch how a pro exits, like he's got somewhere to be. All Might practically disappeared from his position as he sprinted away. Okay, you guys, that is a hero, Kaminari declared with a smile. Ah, I'll never be able to run that fast, Ojiro frowned. Super awesome, Minta squeaked, shaking slightly. The group started heading back through the tunnel to the locker rooms. Hey, Midoriya, said Ochako, drawing the green-haired boy's attention. Why, yeah, what is it, Uraraka? He asked. Do you think if we get a teacher's permission, you could do an analysis of my quirk? Ochako asked. Suddenly, everyone in his class was staring. Ochako watched as Midoriya practically turned to stone, a swirling mixture of emotions showing in his eyes. His reaction causing Ochako to feel guilty for springing the question on him so suddenly. To be honest, you could have waited till you were alone, Himiko criticized. I know, okay, she thought back. Before she could try and apologize, Midoriya finally spoke. Would you really want my analysis? He asked in a quiet voice. Midoriya, we're friends now, okay, Ochako smiled. But I'll only ask for your analysis if you want to write one. Thanks, I think we need to hurry back now, he replied, with tears in the corners of his eyes. I think that went well, commented Himiko. As the girls and boys split off to their respective locker rooms, who do think we should ask? Definitely not Mr. Aizawa. Ochako almost immediately answered the way he was singling out Midoriya. Tells me he doesn't like him for some reason. The girls' private conversation was interrupted when Momo approached them. Excuse me, Uraraka, she said. Do you believe Midoriya would give an analysis to other members of the class? I don't know, Ochako shrugged. You'd have to ask him yourself, Yayurazu. That's fair. I was curious as to the insight he might have about my quirk, she replied. Although I suppose it is a moot point if a teacher doesn't give permission. I want to know what Midoriya meant about my quirk, Toru spoke up, simply sitting on the bench and waiting for them. The girls of the class kept up chatter as they finished getting changed back into their school uniforms. Just as the girls stepped out into the corridor to meet with the boys, Midoriya's phone started to ring. Confused, he pulled the phone out and saw an unknown number calling. He answered cautiously only to be quite surprised when the first words he heard were, "Good afternoon, Mr. Midoriya." Principal Nezu. He gasped. "How did you know my phone number?" The other students looked on in surprise. "I know the phone number of every student and staff member at the school in case of emergencies," Nezu answered calmly. "However, I am calling you because I heard an interesting request from Miss Uraraka inside the exit tunnel." "Why you mean?" he trailed off. "Yes, I do believe providing you classmates with an analysis of their abilities would help their growth and your own," the principal replied. "I would not demand you do this for free, however. I would suggest only writing these analyses for classmates who request it, and turn them in to me so I could evaluate them to provide appropriate financial compensation." That would be amazing, sir," Midoriya stuttered. "But I doubt it would be that good." "Don't worry, young man," Nezu said reassuringly. "This is a school. You are here to improve." There was a pause and slight sipping noise for a moment. "Now I must continue, let you go now, so you can tell your classmates the good news." With that call ended and Izuku placed his phone back into his pocket, a shocked look never leaving his face. "Midoriya, are you okay?" asked Ida with a worried look. "Nezu gave me permission to write analyses," he mumbled. Before realizing where he was, Principal Nezu told me that it was a good idea to write analyses for my classmates if they want one. "That's amazing," Midoriya Ochako cheered. "In that case, you can count me in." "I want to know what you meant earlier," said Hagakure. "So can you put my name on the list?" In that moment, the floodgates opened and various members of the class came forward asking for an analysis on their quirks. The rest of the day's classes passed by in a blur, and before any of them knew it, the day was over. The moment the class was dismissed for the day, Bakugo left without saying a word. "Was it just me, or did Midoriya want to say something to Bakugo?" Himiko asked, as Izuku stared at the blonde's back. "I know what you mean," Ochako replied. "Hey Midoriya," she called. The boy looked over to her. "Do you need any help getting phone numbers for your analysis?" Phone numbers?" he stuttered, his face tinted red. "Uraraka raises a good point, Midoriya," Ida chimed in. "If you had our phone numbers, you would be able to ask questions in real time. In fact, it would be smart if all of us in class had each other's phone numbers, so we can communicate better." "So noisy," Takoyami muttered. "But that's not a bad idea, Ida," Mina spoke up. "We could even start a class group chat." "That sounds fun," said Toru. It didn't take long for phone numbers to get swapped around. Midoriya couldn't help but cry as his contact list expanded more than it ever had before. He didn't even know if he could contact any of them. He focused down on the names of his classmates that had specifically asked for him to analyze their quirks. Ochako Uraraka's in gravity, Toru Hagakure invisibility, Denki Kaminari electrification, Fumikage Takoyami dark shadow, Mina Ashido acid, Yuga Aoyama naval laser, and Momo Yayurazu creation. All of the quirks are really cool and have several different applications in so many different fields. I'm really thankful that they were letting me look at them and thought they seemed to want my analysis," he muttered to himself. Ochako tapped the boy on the shoulder, pulling him out of his thoughts. "I get that you're excited, Midoriya, but it'll probably be easier to write at home." "Oh, sorry," he stuttered. "Don't worry about it," she smiled. "Because I asked for an analysis of my quirk, you can ask a couple questions about it." The class started to head to the school exit, most of them chattering back and forth. However, Todoroki was pointedly ignoring any attempts people made at talking to him. All Might, Izuku gasped when they made their way to front gate, making everyone look at the hero. What are you doing here?" "Ah, hello students. I was trying to speak with young Bakugo. He seemed to take his loss hard," All Might answered. "However, he seems to have gotten over it already." "Do you have any advice for us as well, sir?" Ida asked, the other members of the class wanting to hear the answer. Well, I suppose what I was going to say to young Bakugo is something all of you could hear. All Might replied. Pride is an important attribute to have. But while you certainly have the abilities to become a pro hero, there's still plenty you have to learn. So never take a loss or defeat as a setback. Instead, you should take it as a learning opportunity to correct your mistakes. Thank you, sir, Yaoyorozu replied. It's no problem, students, All Might smiled. Now, if you'll excuse me, the other teachers and I have to review the footage from the battle trials. As the pro hero went back into the building, the class couldn't help but feel excited for their next hero lesson. Midoriya was a natural warrior. She couldn't help it, especially where her son was concerned. She would have to blind to not see the way he always seemed dejected when coming home from junior high. However, he would never tell her what was wrong. She tried her best to make sure she was there for him when he needed her. However, in his last year of junior high, he seemed to have a fire lit under him. He was exercising a lot, and even presented her with a meal plan. Just happy to see her baby happy, she complied. And she was surprised at how quickly he seemed to be packing on muscle. When Izuku had gone to the UA entrance exams, she wouldn't lie and say she wasn't worried, and it was difficult to keep a cheery demeanor in the week afterwards. But after Izuku had his results, he seemed to get that spark back, and he kept that smile even after his first day at UA. Now Izuku was coming back from school, and Inko could tell that he'd had a really good day. He had a large smile across his face, and didn't look up from his phone as he sat down. Did you have a nice day, Izuku? She asked, startling him from his thoughts. What are you looking at? Hi, Mom, he replied. I think my class wants to be friends with me. Oh, that's great, Inko smiled. But I think there's something else that's made you smile. Some of my classmates want me to analyze their quirks. He got quieter as he spoke. Inko, barely hearing what he said, gave her son a patient smile. Izuku, it's okay, she said softly, drawing his attention. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. I know, it's just, Izuku stuttered, his mother staying silent so he could find the words. I want to, Uraraka asked nicely, and All Might complimented me in class. Isn't Uraraka that nice girl you told me about yesterday? Inko asked, a sly smile on her face. Izuku, if you want to impress a girl, you need to be more confident in yourself. Mom, Izuku exclaimed, an intense blush covering his face. I'm just saying that she seems really well-mannered, Inko smiled. Oh, you know I'm just teasing you. Izuku groaned, covering his face. I think I'm gonna go to my room. He walked over to his bedroom door before pausing for a moment. She's just my friend, Mum. Inko sighed. Your father and I were just friends at one point too. Izuku sat down at his desk and took his homework out of his bag. I should probably do me homework before starting any of analyzes, he muttered. Ochako sighed as she arrived back at the empty apartment she'd been living in. Almost immediately she went into the bathroom, stepped into the bathtub, and asked HIMIKO to drop the transformation. Isn't that exhausting? She asked, watching the sludge they were coated in flow down the drain. Yeah, HIMIKO admitted, both today and yesterday were tiring, probably because of how active we were. Is there anything I can do? Ochako asked with concern. I think it's something I'll have to get used to, HIMIKO sighed. I don't want to know how people would react to our situation. Nezu seemed pretty okay with it, Ochako replied. And our parents are accepting of us. Yeah, but Nezu isn't human, so he reacts differently to everyone else, said HIMIKO. And Mum and Dad love you unconditionally, so of course they'd accept the situation. Ochako was silent for a moment. We both know we can't keep this a secret forever. I know, it's just, HIMIKO trailed off. I'd like to keep this to ourselves as much as possible. Okay, Ochako sat back to relax. Just know that whatever anyone says in the future, we're in this together. Thanks, Ochako. Izuku sighed, sitting back in his chair, looking at his now completed homework. Thankfully, there isn't much, he thought to himself. Reaching over to his school bag, he grabbed his notebook labeled quirk analysis for the future No 13, and placed it on his desk. Looking over the notes he made about his classmates' quirks and skills, he started thinking about the best way to present them. I also need to ask a couple questions about their quirks, he thought nervously. He looked at his phone open to the contact page before losing his nerve and putting it aside. He started writing about Yaoyorozu's creation quirk, only to run into a problem right away, as he didn't know what fuels it. Biting the bullet, he grabbed his phone and sent a text to the other hero in training. "Hello Yaoyorozu, it's Midoriya. I have a couple questions about your quirk for my analysis." Afterwards, he sent 2 additional texts. "What fuels your quirk?" and "How do you know what you're creating?" He clenched his eyes shut, not wanting to see an angry reply. His phone's notification tone startled him. Swallowing his fear, he looked at the screen. "Hello Midoriya. To answer both of your questions in order. 1. My quirk burns away my lipids as a fuel source, equal in mass to what I am creating. 2. I have a clear image of what I want to create down to its atomic structure." Reading the reply, Izuku couldn't help but feel significantly better about reaching out to his classmates. Another text caught his attention before he could do anything else. "I hope this helps with your analysis of my quirk." "It does, thank you," he quickly sent back, making notes he could refer to in the future, with a lot more confidence than he had a moment ago. He started writing down a breakdown of Yaoyorozu's quirk and ways to potentially improve it, even doing his best to create a sketch of the girl in her hero costume. As he looked over the 2 sheets of paper he had used for the project, he realized he needed to keep them safe. He searched through his desk drawers for a moment before successfully finding some plastic paper sleeves. A feeling of pride filled Izuku's chest as he stared down at his first analysis that was written for someone else. Deciding to keep his momentum, set Yaoyorozu's analysis aside and began working on one for Takoyami and Dark Shadow. Writing down a breakdown for his avian classmate, Izuku couldn't help but fanboy over the sentient quirk. They were insanely rare after all. As he remembered their battle trial, he realized that they were purposefully destroying the lights. "Those Dark Shadow have a weakness to light sources, or is it just artificial ones?" he muttered. Shaking his head, he remembered that he could ask them directly. Grabbing his phone, he sent a text to Takoyami and Dark Shadow. "Hello Takoyami, it's Midoriya. I have some questions about what Dark Shadow is capable of." After waiting for a moment, he sent another message. "What limitations does Dark Shadow have?" After thinking for a moment, Izuku sent a second text. "Besides being connected to you and a possible vulnerability to light." While he waited for a reply, he drew a sketch of Takoyami in his hero costume with Dark Shadow behind him. "Hi Midoriya, Dark Shadow here. Light makes me weaker." Izuku read this and noted it down. "Fumi also says it makes me easier to control. Does your tether do anything but connect you?" he texted. "And what is its maximum length?" Izuku didn't receive an immediate answer, so he began writing parts of his analysis, pointing out Dark Shadow's strengths, but noting where Takoyami could improve himself. His attention was grabbed by his phone's text alert. "Hello Midoriya, it is Takoyami. If I concentrate, I can feel Dark Shadow's presence, even if I cannot see them." He read, "However, we have never tested what our maximum separation length." "Thank you for the answers," Izuku sent back, before focusing on his breakdown page, writing what he hoped were unconventional strategies that his classmate could make of use of. Upon finishing the second analysis for his classmates, he thought over the remaining 4 he had to write, and thought about who to make the next one for. After a moment, he chose Uraraka, the first friend he'd made at school, as he drew a sketch of her in her hero costume. He couldn't help but blush as remembered the comment she made to present Mike in his acceptance message. "You know the guy who saved me from the 0-pointer? He has green hair, freckles, kinda cute." Izuku grabbed his phone and looked at Uraraka's contact page. "Hello Uraraka. I'm writing your quirk analysis, and I was wondering if you would answer some questions," he texted, and decided to wait for her response before sending his questions. The green-haired boy was taken off guard when his phone started ringing. He stared at the ringing device before nervously reached out and looked at the caller ID, revealing that Ochako was calling him. Taking a deep breath to calm his nerves, he hit accept. "Hey Midoriya," said Ochako. "Sorry if I startled you with the call. It's just that more phone is an older model, so I figured this would be easier." That's okay," he stuttered, not used to a girl's voice so close to his ear. I was just, writing your analysis." "Okay, I'm sure I can answer your questions about my quirk." Inko looked over the table with the dinner she had prepared for her and her son. Just as she was about to call him over, she faintly heard him laugh. With her curiosity drawn, she approached his door as quietly as she could and placed her ear against the wood. So your parents made you wear mittens?" Izuku asked, as he caught his breath. "Yeah, but it's not my fault that they left the window open wide enough for the table to fit through," a girl's voice answered, with enough digital distortion that Inko could tell it was a phone speaker. "And that's how you found out your quirk is always active, even when you sleep," Izuku stated with a hint of satisfaction, like he'd just finished a jigsaw puzzle. Inko smiled. Hearing her son sound so happy and carefree as he talked to classmate was something that reassured her that whatever caused that change last year was something positive. With a not so small amount of guilt, she knocked on his door and interrupted the conversation. "Izuku, dinner is ready." "I'll be right there," he called back. "Sorry, Uraraka, I have to go." "Don't worry about it. We'll see each other tomorrow anyway," Uraraka replied before the call hung up. It wasn't long before mother and son were sat at the dinner table. Inko stared at her son's relaxed posture and smiled. "So this Uraraka girl sounds nice." She smirked as Izuku started turning red. "I think you would have kept talking to her all night if I hadn't knocked on your door." "Mum!" he shouted. "What?" she asked. "I'm just glad my baby has people that he enjoys spending time with." As Izuku turned a brighter shade of red and tried to stutter a reply, Inko knew that she had to meet the girl that provoked such a reaction in her son.